Get us the owner right now. My ex-wife yelled at the country club. He doesn't belong here. Her new husband added, remove him immediately. I stood quietly. The manager smiled. Sir, how would you like to handle their family's membership? Their faces dropped. Look, I'm not saying I planned the whole thing like some kind of revenge-obsessed movie villain, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy every single second of what was about to go down. 3 years. That's how long it had been since I last set foot in the Westwood Hills Country Club, and honestly, those 3 years had been pretty damn peaceful without the constant background noise of champagne-fueled gossip and the kind of fake laughter that makes your teeth hurt just listening to it. The last time I was here, I was still married to Miranda. Well, technically married. Emotionally, I think she'd checked out somewhere around our second anniversary when she realized I wasn't going to magically transform into a trust fund baby who spent his weekends yacht shopping. But I stayed because that's what you do, right? You work on things. You try. You ignore the fact that your wife looks at you the same way most people look at expired yogurt in the back of the fridge. Then she met Todd. Todd fucking Preston. A corporate finance guy who wore suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent and thought owning a Rolex made him interesting. Spoiler alert, it didn't. The guy had the personality of a PowerPoint presentation and the charisma of a parking meter, but he had money, and apparently, that was Miranda's primary love language. She left me faster than you can say irreconcilable differences, and 6 months later, she was Mrs. Preston, living her best life at the very club I was now walking back into. They'd made this place their personal kingdom. Every Sunday brunch, every charity gala, every goddamn opportunity to flash their wealth like a neon sign that screamed, look at us. We're better than you. And honestly, good for them. I mean, if you need a country club to validate your existence, you've got bigger problems than I could ever solve. But here's the thing about Karma. She's patient, she's creative, and she's got a wicked sense of humor. I pulled into the parking lot that Sunday morning in my completely average car, wearing a navy polo that I'd bought on sale, jeans that were comfortable as hell, and loafers that had seen better days but still had some life in them. Was it club attire? Absolutely not. Did I give a single shit? Also no. I wasn't there to play golf or sip overpriced mimosas while pretending to care about the stock market. I was there for something much more satisfying than any of that country club nonsense could ever provide. Closure. Like her whole expression just collapsed in on itself, like a poorly done facelift finally giving up the ghost. It was beautiful. Truly, genuinely beautiful. She went from, I'm living my best life, to, oh shit, my past just walked in wearing jeans in about half a second. She immediately leaned toward Todd, and I could read her lips even from across the terrace. What is he doing here? Todd's face went through an impressive range of colors, starting at his normal spray tan orange, moving through pink, and landing solidly on the color of an undercooked steak. The guy looked like he was about to have a medical emergency, and honestly, I was kind of hoping he would. Not in a murderous way, just in a this would make the story even better way. He stood up so fast his chair actually scraped against the marble, that awful sound that makes everyone look. You don't belong here, he barked, his voice carrying across the entire terrace because subtlety was apparently not in his vocabulary. Security. I smiled. Not a big smile, not some villainous grin, just a small, calm, I know something you don't know kind of smile. Good morning to you too, I said pleasantly, because nothing pisses off angry people more than someone being polite when they're losing their minds. The waiter who'd been pouring coffee at the next table literally froze mid-pour, the stream of coffee hanging in the air for a second like he'd been hit with a pause button. Every member on that terrace turned to look. You could practically smell the scandal in the air, mixing with the overpriced cologne and the scent of fresh croissants. And that's when Miranda, in all her designer-dressed glory, made her grand declaration. She stood up too, because apparently, this was now a standing argument, and pointed at me like I was some kind of intruder who'd crawled in through a window. Get us the owner right now, she demanded, her voice shrill enough to shatter those fancy chandeliers. He doesn't belong here. I stayed quiet. I learned a long time ago that when people are digging their own graves, you don't grab the shovel and help them. You just stand back, maybe get some popcorn, and watch the show. Let the loud ones tire themselves out. Let them make all the noise, all the demands, all the self-righteous proclamations about who belongs where and who has the right to exist in their precious spaces. Because here's what Miranda didn't know. What Todd didn't know. What none of those smug, self-satisfied members sipping their champagne and judging everyone's net worth didn't know. I wasn't there as a guest. I wasn't crashing their precious brunch or trying to win back my ex-wife or make some pathetic plea for acceptance into their little rich people club. I was there as the owner. The actual, legal, documented owner of the entire goddamn place. The guy who signed their paychecks. The person who decided whether that terrace got renovated or torn down. The man who could, with a single phone call, turn their social fortress into a parking lot if he felt like it. But I wasn't going to tell them that. Not yet. Because the look on their faces when they found out, that was going to be worth every single day of the 3 years I'd spent away from this place, working my ass off, building something real while they sipped champagne and pretended their memberships made them important. So I stood there, hands in my pockets, calm as Sunday morning, and waited for the owner they demanded to show up. And when she did, Patricia Lang, the club manager who knew exactly who I was and exactly why I was there. I could barely contain the smile that was threatening to break across my face. This was going to be good. Okay, so before I get into the absolutely delicious part where Miranda and Todd realize they've royally screwed themselves, you need to understand how I ended up owning the place where my ex-wife plays pretend socialite. Because trust me, this didn't happen by accident. This was years in the making, and it all started with the slowest, most painful divorce since Henry VIII decided collecting wives was his new hobby. 3 years earlier, I was that guy. You know the one, the reliable husband. The boring one. The one who showed up, did his job, paid the bills, and apparently committed the cardinal sin of not being exciting enough for a woman who thought adventure meant shopping at a different boutique than usual. Miranda liked to call me reliable the way other people say tumor or jury duty. Like it was some kind of character flaw that I actually showed up when I said I would, and didn't blow our savings on a sports car I couldn't afford. You're just so steady, she'd say, and I swear to God, the way she said steady made it sound like I'd personally offended her ancestors. Like being dependable was somehow worse than being a train wreck. And maybe in her world, it was. Because in Miranda's universe, drama equaled passion, and stability equaled boredom, and God forbid you be married to someone who didn't create chaos wherever they went. While she was playing socialite, and let me tell you, that woman could turn a simple lunch into a 3-act performance complete with costume changes. I was working my ass off. 60-hour weeks, sometimes more. I was in property management back then, which sounds boring as hell until you realize it's actually fascinating in a how much can possibly go wrong with a building kind of way. I specialized in failing estates and old hotels. The kind of properties that looked like they'd been abandoned since the Reagan administration and smelled like a combination of mold, regret, and expired dreams. But here's the thing about those properties. They had potential. Underneath all that decay and neglect, there was something worth saving. You just had to have the patience to see it through, to put in the work when everyone else had given up. Kind of like my marriage, actually, except the buildings were more grateful for the effort. I'd find these places that everyone else had written off, these gorgeous old structures that just needed someone to believe in them again, and I'd bring them back to life. New plumbing, updated electrical, restored facades, the works. It was hard, thankless work that had you coming home smelling like dust and desperation. But man, when you saw that finished product, when you saw what something could become with the right attention and investment, that was worth every grueling hour. Miranda didn't see it that way, obviously. She saw a husband who came home tired, who smelled like construction sites, who didn't have the energy to attend every single social event she deemed mandatory for our image. Never mind that I was building something real. Never mind that every project I completed added to our net worth and our future security. No, what mattered was that I wasn't exciting. I wasn't spontaneous. I wasn't Todd fucking Preston with his private jet and his inability to have a single original thought. The company I worked for hit a rough patch in our 5th year of marriage. Not a disaster, not bankruptcy, just a rough patch. The kind of thing that happens in business when you're making long-term investments instead of chasing quick profits. We had capital tied up in projects that hadn't paid off yet. And yeah, my paychecks got a little smaller for a while. We had to budget, cut back on some of the unnecessary expenses. You know, act like normal people instead of pretending we were auditioning for a reality show about the rich and shameless. Miranda acted like I'd personally bankrupted us and murdered her dreams in the process. I can't be married to someone who doesn't have direction, she announced one evening over dinner, like she was reading from a script she'd rehearsed. Direction. That was rich coming from someone whose biggest accomplishment that year was getting on the planning committee for a charity gala where she spent more on her dress than the event raised for actual charity. I should have seen it coming, honestly. The signs were all there. The way she'd started mentioning Todd's name more often. Todd said the market is shifting. Todd just bought a house in the Hamptons. Todd thinks we should diversify our portfolio. Lady, we don't have a portfolio to diversify. We have a checking account and a mortgage. Calm down. But I was too busy trying to save our marriage and build my career to notice that she'd already mentally moved on. She'd upgraded me in her head before she'd even filed the papers. I was the old model, the reliable sedan that got you from point A to point B, but didn't turn any heads. Todd was the shiny new sports car that made cool sounds and impressed her friends. Never mind that he had the depth of a parking lot puddle. 2 months after she left, she was on Todd's private jet to Maui. 2 months. I'd barely finished processing the divorce papers, and she was already posting Instagram photos with captions like, "New adventures with my forever love," and "Finally found my person." I wanted to comment, "Your person has the personality of a tax form," but I'm petty, not stupid. Social media feuds are for people with too much time and too little dignity. I signed the papers quietly. Didn't fight, didn't argue, didn't try to take her to the cleaners the way she probably expected. I gave her the house, that overpriced suburban McMansion she'd insisted we buy because it had the right address, and I walked away. She thought she'd won. She thought she'd upgraded. She'd traded reliable for rich, boring for exciting, steady for spectacular. What Miranda didn't know, what she couldn't have known because she never actually paid attention to what I did for work, was that the rough patch my company hit wasn't a failure. It was an investment phase. The kind of strategic move you make when you're playing the long game instead of chasing immediate gratification. We were tying up capital and properties that would pay off big in a few years, but you had to have the vision and the patience to wait it out. Patience. That thing I had in spades and Miranda had never heard of. While the divorce was being finalized, while she was picking out china patterns with Todd and planning their wedding at, you guessed it, the Westwood Hills Country Club, I was making moves. Quiet moves. The kind that don't make for good Instagram posts, but make for excellent bank statements down the line. See, that's the thing about being underestimated. That's the beautiful, ironic gift that Miranda gave me when she left. She thought I was going nowhere, that I'd peaked at reliable property manager who smells like drywall. And that assumption meant she stopped paying attention. She stopped watching. She stopped caring what I was doing with my life because in her mind, I was already irrelevant. And when people think you're irrelevant, that's when you can make your best moves. That's when you can build an empire while they're busy posting selfies and congratulating themselves on escaping before you drag them down. The rough patch ended. The investments paid off. The properties we'd been nursing back to health started generating serious revenue. And I took my cut of those profits, added them to my divorce settlement savings. Yeah, I actually saved money during my divorce because I'm apparently a masochist who can't stop being responsible even when my life is falling apart. And I started looking at opportunities. Big opportunities. The kind that required partners, capital, and the kind of vision that sees potential where everyone else sees problems. The kind of opportunity that would let me buy the very country club where my ex-wife had just become a member. After the divorce, I did what any rational person does when their life implodes. I disappeared. Not literally, obviously. I didn't fake my death or move to Costa Rica or join a monastery. Though honestly, the monastery thing had some appeal during the particularly rough nights when I was eating cereal for dinner and wondering where everything went wrong. No, I disappeared professionally. Socially. I went off the grid in that way where people stop seeing you at the usual places, stop hearing your name in conversations, and eventually just assume you've faded into whatever obscurity failed husbands fade into. I deleted my social media accounts. All of them. Facebook, Instagram, that LinkedIn profile where I'd posted exactly twice, and both times it was because someone told me I had to build my brand. You know what builds your brand? Actually doing shit, not posting inspirational quotes over pictures of sunrises. I cut off contact with the mutual friends Miranda and I had shared, which wasn't a huge loss considering most of them were her friends who tolerated me the way you tolerate your friend's boring boyfriend at parties. I stopped going to the places we used to frequent, stopped showing up at the networking events and charity galas, where people measured your worth by your watch and your zip code. I became a ghost. And let me tell you, being a ghost is incredibly freeing when you've spent years trying to be visible to someone who was always looking past you anyway. But here's the thing about going off the grid. I wasn't hiding. I was building. There's a difference between running away and making a strategic retreat, and I was definitely in the latter category. I took my savings, which was decent thanks to years of being the boring guy who actually saved money instead of blowing it on bottle service and cars that depreciated faster than Miranda's interest in our marriage. I looked at that bank account and I thought, okay, you've got one shot here. You can play it safe, get a normal job, live a normal life, and die a normal death. Or you can bet on yourself. Spoiler alert, I bet on myself. And unlike Miranda's bet on Todd, mine actually paid off. I reached out to two guys I'd worked with in property management, Marcus Chun and David Rodriguez. These weren't just colleagues. These were the guys who'd been in the trenches with me, who understood that real wealth wasn't built at country clubs. It was built in the unglamorous work of turning broken things into valuable things. Marcus was a financial wizard who could look at a balance sheet and see opportunities where everyone else saw red ink. David was a construction genius who could walk through a condemned building and tell you exactly what it needed to become profitable. We met at a dive bar, because of course we did. This isn't a movie where people make business deals in fancy restaurants with cloth napkins, and I laid out my pitch. We start our own company. We specialize in distressed leisure properties. Hotels, resorts, country clubs, places that are failing because they're mismanaged, outdated, or owned by people who stopped caring. We buy them cheap, fix them up, and either flip them or run them ourselves. Marcus looked at me like I'd suggested we start a circus. Leisure properties? Do you know how many of those fail? Exactly, I said, which is why we can buy them for pennies on the dollar. Everyone's scared of them. Everyone thinks they're money pits. But they're only money pits if you don't know what you're doing. David was more optimistic, probably because he was already mentally renovating hypothetical buildings in his head. What's the startup capital? I told them what I had. Marcus whistled low. That's not nothing. But it's not by a hotel money either. It's by a struggling property with motivated sellers' money. I countered. We find places that are underwater, where the owners are desperate to get out. We offer them an exit strategy. We take on the debt. We take on the risk, and we do the work everyone else is too lazy or too scared to do. There was a long pause where they both just stared at me, and I could see them doing the mental math. Could this actually work? Was I crazy? Was this going to be a spectacular failure that they'd tell stories about years later while working for someone else? Finally, Marcus grinned. Fuck it. I'm in. David raised his beer. Harrison Hospitality Group? Has a nice ring to it, I agreed. And just like that, over cheap beer and bar peanuts, we started something real. Something that didn't exist to impress anyone or look good on Instagram or make ex-wives jealous. We started it because we saw an opportunity and we had the balls to take it. The first few months were brutal, I'm not gonna lie. We were working out of David's garage because office space is for people with money, and we were definitely not those people yet. We spent our days cold calling property owners, analyzing financial statements, and touring buildings that looked like they'd been used as sets in post-apocalyptic movies. We saw mold that probably had its own ecosystem. We saw electrical systems that were fire hazards waiting for a spark. We saw pools that had turned into swamps and ballrooms that smelled like something had died in them, which, in one memorable case, something actually had. But we also saw potential. We saw what these places could be with the right investment, the right management, the right vision. And more importantly, we saw sellers who were motivated as hell. People who'd inherited properties they didn't want. Investors who'd gotten in over their heads. Companies that had expanded too fast and needed to shed assets before they went under completely. Our first acquisition was a small boutique hotel in upstate New York that was hemorrhaging money. The owner was 3 months from bankruptcy and would have sold it to a lamp if the lamp had offered cash. We bought it for basically the cost of the land, took out a loan for renovations, and spent 6 months gutting and rebuilding the entire operation. New management, new branding, updated rooms, actually competent staff, revolutionary concepts, I know. 18 months later, we sold it for 3 times what we paid. That money Not because I was hiding anything illegal, just because I'm not an idiot, and I knew Miranda would have made it her personal mission to sabotage the deal if she'd known I was involved. So while she was attending her charity luncheons and sipping champagne and probably talking shit about her boring ex-husband who'd never amounted to anything, I was signing paychecks for the staff who served her. I was approving the renovations that improved her beloved club. I was the invisible hand that made her social fortress actually function. And she had absolutely no idea. So there I was, standing on the terrace of my own damn country club, watching my ex-wife have what appeared to be a minor stroke, while her new husband turned colors that don't exist in nature. Which, to be fair, in her world was probably anyone who made less than 7 figures annually. She spotted me about 3 seconds after Miranda did, and her reaction was almost as good. Her hand went to her pearl necklace. Because of course it did. Because that's what women like Loretta do when confronted with anything that disrupts their carefully constructed reality. And she actually gasped. Like, audibly gasped. Like she was a Victorian lady who'd just witnessed someone use the wrong fork. "Oh Lord, it's him," she hissed, loud enough for half the terrace to hear. "How did he even get past the gate?" I pulled out a chair at a nearby empty table. Not at theirs because I'm petty, but I'm not rude, and sat down with the kind of casual confidence that comes from knowing you're about to ruin someone's entire day. "Public road," I said pleasantly, giving her my best smile. "You'd be surprised how democracy works, Loretta. Anyone can drive down a public road. Wild concept, I know." Her face did this thing where it tried to look offended but couldn't quite manage it because Botox had robbed her of most facial expressions. "This is a private club," she managed. "Sure is," I agreed. "Beautiful place. Love what they've done with it recently. Really turned it around." Todd slammed his napkin down on the table hard enough that his water glass jumped. The man was practically vibrating with rage, and I wondered briefly if he was going to have an aneurysm right there on the terrace. That would be awkward to explain to the insurance company. "Manager," he bellowed, standing up and scanning the terrace like he was summoning a servant in a period drama. Members at other tables were definitely watching now. This was better entertainment than anything they'd get at the club's movie night. I could see phones being discreetly pulled out, probably texting their friends about the drama unfolding at the Preston table. In a place like this, gossip was currency, and I'd just handed everyone a jackpot. Miranda stood up too, because apparently this confrontation required everyone to be on their feet. Her face had gone from shocked white to angry red, and her voice had that shrill quality that I remembered all too well from our marriage. "He's not a member. He has no business being here." "Strong stance," I said, examining my fingernails like this was all mildly boring. Really committing to it. "I respect that." "This isn't a joke," she snapped. "You're trespassing." "Am I though?" I tilted my head, genuinely curious to see how far she'd take this before reality crashed down on her designer-clad shoulders. "I mean, define trespassing. Because I'm pretty sure trespassing requires being somewhere you're not allowed to be, and I'm feeling pretty allowed right now." Todd's face was now somewhere between burgundy and eggplant. "You divorced her. You have no connection to this club. You have no right to be here." "Well, when you put it that way," I said thoughtfully, "you make some interesting points." "Wrong points, but interesting." Loretta clutched her pearls harder, if that was even possible. I was starting to worry she might actually break the strand, and we'd have the whole dramatic pearls rolling across the floor moment. "Patricia," she called out, her voice dripping with that entitled tone that suggested she'd never been told no in her entire life. "Patricia Lang, we need you immediately." I settled back in my chair, perfectly comfortable, perfectly calm. This was it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, and I was going to savor every single second of it. The other members were absolutely riveted now. Some had stopped even pretending to eat, their forks frozen halfway to their mouths. A couple in the corner had their phones out, definitely recording. This was going to be all over the club's group chat within minutes. Patricia Lang appeared from inside, walking with that measured pace of someone who knew exactly what was happening and was thoroughly enjoying it. Patricia was in her 50s, professional as hell, and had been running the day-to-day operations of the club since before Miranda and Todd were even members. When we'd acquired the place, she'd been one of the first people I'd met with, and she'd been genuinely excited about our plans to actually invest in improvements instead of just milking the membership fees. She'd also thought it was hilarious that I was Miranda's ex-husband, and had kept that secret like her life depended on it. Yes, Mr. Preston? Patricia asked, her tone perfectly neutral, but I could see the amusement dancing in her eyes. Todd pointed at me like I was a piece of trash that had blown onto the terrace. This man is trespassing. Remove him immediately. Miranda jumped in, her voice getting higher and more frantic. He's not a member. He's my ex-husband, and he has no business being here. This is harassment. Harassment seems strong, I interjected. I'm literally just sitting here. I haven't even ordered coffee yet. You're ruining our brunch. Miranda shrieked. Your brunch was ruined the moment you decided to make a scene, I pointed out. I was just going to sit here quietly and maybe get some eggs Benedict. This whole drama thing, that's all you guys. Patricia turned to me, and I could see she was struggling not to smile. Sir, are you a guest of a member? This was it. This was the moment. I let the pause hang there for just a beat longer than necessary, watching Miranda's face cycle through emotions like a slot machine, watching Todd's complexion continue its journey through the color spectrum, watching Loretta grip those pearls like they were the only thing keeping her tethered to reality. In a way, I said casually, like I was discussing the weather. I own the place. The silence that followed was so complete, so absolute. You could have heard a credit card decline from across the lawn. Even the birds seemed to shut up. The universe itself seemed to pause, waiting to see what would happen next. Todd laughed. Actually laughed. But it was that nervous, high-pitched laugh that people do when they're hoping something is a joke, but starting to suspect it isn't. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm very serious, I said. Bought it 8 months ago. Been meaning to drop by more often, but you know how it is. Busy owning multiple properties, running a successful business, living my best life. The usual boring stuff. Miranda's mouth opened and closed like a fish. No sound came out. It was beautiful. Patricia turned to Todd, and now she wasn't even trying to hide her smile. He is, actually. Mr. Harrison is the principal owner of Harrison Hospitality Group, which acquired Westwood Hills Country Club last October. She paused, then looked back at me. Sir, how would you like to handle their family's membership? And just like that, the power dynamic shifted so completely that I could physically see Todd and Miranda process it. They went from righteous and demanding to pale and panicked in about 3 seconds flat. Todd's burgundy face drained to white. Miranda actually swayed on her feet. Loretta looked like she might actually faint, which would have been dramatic but also would have required me to help, and I really didn't want to do that. You? Miranda whispered, her voice barely audible. You own the club? Yeah. Surprise. I smiled at her, the kind of smile that said everything I'd wanted to say for 3 years but had been too classy to actually voice. Should have paid more attention to what I was doing instead of assuming I'd amount to nothing. Professional tip for next time. The entire terrace was dead silent, everyone waiting to see what I'd do next. And honestly, I was kind of waiting to see what I'd do next too. Chapter 5. Remove him immediately. Patricia stood there like a referee at the world's most satisfying boxing match, waiting for me to make the call. The entire terrace had gone from casual Sunday brunch to must-see TV in about 30 seconds, and I was absolutely here for it. This was the kind of moment you dream about during those long, lonely nights after your divorce when you're eating ramen and wondering if karma actually exists or if it's just something people say to make themselves feel better about getting screwed over. Turns out, karma is real. She just takes her sweet time showing up. Todd recovered first, probably because he'd spent his entire career bullshitting his way through corporate presentations, and this was just another performance for him. He straightened his designer tie, because of course he was wearing a tie to Sunday brunch. The guy probably wore a suit to the beach, and tried to laugh it off. You can't be serious. You bought this club? Yep, I said, popping the P sound because I'm mature like that. Signed the papers 8 months ago. Been improving it ever since. You're welcome, by the way. That new espresso machine in the cafe? My idea. The upgraded pool heating system? Also me. The fact that the staff actually gets paid a living wage now? Yeah, that was kind of a priority. Miranda's hands were shaking. Like, visibly trembling. Her voice came out strangled, like someone was squeezing her throat. You've owned this place, while we've been members? Yeah. Funny how that works out, isn't it? I leaned back in my chair, getting comfortable. I've been signing off on your membership renewals, approving the catering for your little charity events, reading the comment cards you leave at the front desk. You left one last month, actually. Something about the water temperature in the pool? We fixed that. Todd's face was doing that color-changing thing again, cycling back to red. This is absurd. You can't just buy a country club. Apparently, I can. I replied, examining my nails like this conversation was mildly boring instead of the highlight of my entire year. And judging by the quarterly reports, I did it pretty well. Revenue's up 23%, member satisfaction is at an all-time high, and we're actually turning a profit now. Wild what happens when you treat a business like a business instead of your personal playground. Loretta finally found her voice, which had gone up about 3 octaves. Patricia, surely there are rules about this. He can't just waltz in here and claim ownership. Patricia pulled out her tablet. She always had that thing with her, God bless her organized soul, and swiped through a few screens. Actually, Mrs. Whitmore, Mr. Harrison's ownership is fully documented and legal. Would you like me to show you the acquisition paperwork? No. Miranda practically shouted, then seemed to realize how loud she was and lowered her voice to a harsh whisper. No, that won't be necessary. Cool, I said. Patricia, would you mind pulling up the Preston family's membership contract? I'd like to review it. I watched Todd's Adam's apple bob as he swallowed hard. Miranda went even paler, which I didn't think was physically possible. She looked like she might actually pass out, and part of me kind of hoped she would because that would make this story even better when I told it later. Patricia nodded, completely professional, though I could see she was eating this up. She'd dealt with the Preston family's entitled attitude for years, and now she got to watch them squirm. The Preston family membership, she read from her tablet, her voice clear enough for everyone on the terrace to hear. Active since 2016. Annual dues $42,000. Subject to termination for conduct unbecoming or behavior detrimental to club reputation. The silence was so thick you could have cut it with one of those overpriced steak knives they used here. Todd's voice cracked slightly. You wouldn't dare. I looked at him, really looked at him, this corporate peacock who'd swooped in and taken my wife because he had a bigger bank account and shinier toys. This guy who thought cufflinks made him intelligent and money made him important. This guy who'd probably never worked an honest day in his life, who'd never had to actually build something from nothing, who'd never been told no by anyone who mattered. Actually, Todd, I said, my voice calm and steady, I would. You just try to have the owner kicked out of his own property. You called security on me. You demanded I be removed. You made a scene in front of every member here, disrupted their peaceful Sunday brunch, and generally acted like an entitled jackass. That seems fairly unbecoming, wouldn't you say? Miranda grabbed Todd's arm. He's bluffing. He wouldn't actually. Oh, I absolutely would, I interrupted. Patricia, she stood at attention, waiting. This woman deserved a raise. Hell, she deserved a medal. Effective immediately, I said, taking my time with each word, savoring them like fine wine. The Preston family's membership is suspended for 60 days pending review of their conduct and whether they represent the kind of members we want at Westwood Hills. You know that sound a balloon makes when all the air suddenly rushes out. That's basically what happened to Miranda right then. She deflated completely, her whole body seeming to shrink. You're punishing us because of what? Because of your clothes? Because we thought you didn't belong here. Not at all, I said, standing up now because this moment deserved to be delivered on my feet. I'm punishing you because you opened your mouth before using your brain. You made assumptions. You were rude, entitled, and frankly embarrassing to watch. This club has standards, Miranda. Standards you've apparently forgotten in your rush to feel superior to everyone around you. A few members actually clapped. Quiet, polite golf claps, but still, you could see the relief on some of their faces. Apparently, the Preston family wasn't exactly beloved around here. Who knew? Todd tried one last time, his voice desperate now. You'll regret this. Maybe. I shrugged, picking up the menu because honestly, I was getting hungry. But I'll do it while sitting in your usual corner booth, drinking coffee that I own, in a building that has my name on the deed. So, I think I'll survive the regret. Patricia escorted them out, their perfect Sunday ruined, their social standing demolished, their membership suspended. As they walked away, Loretta still clutching those damn pearls, I finally ordered my coffee. Best cup I ever had. Miranda stood there blinking like someone had just slapped her with a reality check, her mouth opening and closing while her brain tried to process what I'd just said. The mascara she probably spent 45 minutes applying was starting to run slightly at the corners, and honestly, it was the most human she'd looked in years. Turns out public humiliation is a hell of a makeup remover. You? She managed to get out, her voice trembling somewhere between disbelief and rage. You bought the club? You. Me. I confirmed, sipping the water that had been sitting at my table. Is this really that hard to comprehend? I mean, I know you thought I was going nowhere, but damn, Miranda, I've owned the place for 8 months. You've been here like every week. How did you not notice? How was I supposed to know? She shot back, her voice getting shrill again. That pitch that used to make me want to stick forks in my ears during our marriage. You never told me. Why would I tell you? I asked reasonably. We're divorced. We don't have kids. We don't have shared assets. You made it pretty clear you wanted nothing to do with my boring, directionless life. So I gave you what you wanted, complete absence of me from your world. You're welcome. Todd, who'd been silent for a solid 30 seconds, which might have been a personal record for him, finally found his voice. This is vindictive. You bought this place just to get back at us. I actually laughed at that. Like, genuinely laughed, because the ego on this guy was something else. Oh, Todd, buddy, no. I bought this place because it was a solid investment opportunity. A distressed property in a premium location with motivated sellers and huge upside potential. The fact that my ex-wife and her new husband had made it their social headquarters? That was just the universe's way of saying, hey, good job, here's a bonus. I don't believe you, Miranda said, but her voice had lost its conviction. She was starting to realize that this was real, that this was actually happening, that her boring ex-husband had somehow managed to buy the very place she'd been using as proof of her upgraded life. Don't have to believe me, I said with a shrug. Belief is optional. Reality isn't. Patricia, you want to fill them in on the details? Patricia stepped forward, still maintaining that professional demeanor even though I knew she was dying inside with how good this was. Harrison Hospitality Group acquired Westwood Hills Country Club on October 15th of last year through a competitive bidding process. The sale was finalized on November 3rd. Mr. Harrison and his partners have since invested approximately $2.3 million in property improvements, staff compensation increases, and operational upgrades. $2.3 million, I added helpfully. That's roughly 55 years' worth of your annual membership dues, Todd. Just for context. His face went through another color transition. I was starting to worry about his blood pressure. You can't just, he started, then stopped, because I think even he realized how stupid he was about to sound. Can't just what? Invest in my own property? Run a successful business? Exist in a space you decided was yours? I leaned forward slightly. Here's the thing, Todd. You don't own this place. You never owned this place. You're a member, a customer. And right now, you're a customer who just tried to have the owner thrown out. That's not great business sense, my guy. Loretta had been silent this entire time, which was probably a first for her. She looked like she was having some kind of internal crisis, her worldview crumbling around her like cheap drywall. But you were in property management, she said weakly, as if that somehow made this impossible. Still am, I said. Just manage my own properties now instead of someone else's. Turns out, when you actually know what you're doing and you're willing to put in the work, you can build something pretty substantial. Revolutionary concept, I know. Miranda's hands were shaking worse now. You've been watching us? This whole time. Watching? No. That would be creepy. Owning the business where you happen to be a member? That's just capitalism, baby. I stood up because I felt like this moment deserved me being on my feet. I haven't been watching you, Miranda. I've been building a life. A successful one. The kind of life you said I'd never have because I lacked direction. She flinched at that, and I saw recognition flash across her face. She remembered saying that. Of course she did. Well, I continued. Turns out I had plenty of direction. I just wasn't sharing the GPS coordinates with you. And now here we are. Me owning a multi-million-dollar property. You standing on my terrace having a meltdown because you can't handle the fact that the guy you discarded like yesterday's trash actually made something of himself. This isn't fair, she whispered. Fair? I couldn't help but laugh. You left me when things got hard. You married a guy with more money than personality. You spent 3 years rubbing your upgrade in everyone's face, including mine through mutual friends who couldn't wait to tell me how much better you were doing. And now you're mad because I succeeded without you? That's not unfair, Miranda. That's just you realizing you made a bad bet. Todd tried to salvage something, anything. We could sue. For emotional distress, or... Go ahead, I said cheerfully. My lawyers would love that. They get bored with the easy stuff. A frivolous lawsuit from a suspended member would really make their day. Plus, discovery would be fun. We'd get to dig into all your finances, your behavior here at the club, every complaint that's been filed about you. And trust me, there have been complaints. Patricia nodded. Several, actually. Todd's face somehow went even redder. Miranda looked like she might actually cry, which almost made me feel bad. But then I remembered 5 years of being made to feel inadequate, of being treated like an embarrassment, of being left when things got tough. Yeah, I didn't feel that bad. So here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice calm but firm. You're going to leave. Patricia's going to send you a formal letter about your suspension. You're going to spend the next 60 days thinking real hard about whether you want to be members here when your behavior is going to be under a microscope. And I'm going to sit here, have my coffee, maybe some Eggs Benedict, and enjoy my Sunday. Miranda opened her mouth one more time. I can't believe you're doing this. I can't believe it took me this long, I replied. Now if you'll excuse me, I've got a club to run. And with that, they left. Finally, the show was over. By the time I made it to my car, my phone was already going absolutely insane. I'm talking full-blown digital meltdown. Buzz, 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 like I'd kicked a hornet's nest made entirely of notifications. I didn't even have to look to know who it was, but I looked anyway because I'm only human, and watching someone spiral via text message is honestly its own form of entertainment. Miranda. Of course it was Miranda. The first text came through at 11:47 a.m., exactly 12 minutes after she'd been escorted off the terrace like someone who'd had too much wine and started a fight at a wedding. You humiliated me in front of everyone. No hi. No can we talk. Just straight to the victim narrative. Classic Miranda. Take no responsibility, claim maximum damage, make it all about how she'd been wronged. I almost responded with, you humiliated yourself, I just watched, but decided to let her keep going. This was clearly going to be a marathon, not a sprint. 11:48 a.m. You've ruined our reputation. Our reputation. Like she and Todd were some kind of power couple whose social standing mattered to anyone outside their little bubble of country club narcissism. Lady, your reputation was that you were high-maintenance snobs who treated the staff like furniture. I didn't ruin anything. I just held up a mirror. 11:49 a.m. How could you be so petty? There it was. The word I'd been waiting for. Petty. Because standing up for yourself after being treated like garbage is apparently petty. Because buying a business and running it successfully is petty. Because not letting people walk all over you in your own establishment is petty. Sure, Miranda. I'm the petty one here. 11:51 a.m. Todd is livid. He wants to talk to you. Oh, I'm sure he does. I'm sure Todd would love to have a little man-to-man conversation where he tries to intimidate me or buy me off, or whatever corporate finance bros do when they don't get their way. Pass. 11:53 a.m. You can't just kick us out. We have rights. Rights. In all caps. Because nothing says, I'm losing an argument, quite like random capitalization. Yeah, you have rights. You have the right to be treated according to the membership agreement you signed, which includes a clause about conduct that you definitely violated. You also have the right to remain silent, which I highly recommend you exercise. I waited until I was in my car, engine running, air conditioning blasting away the late morning heat, before I responded. Just one line. Clean, simple, devastating. Dress code violation. You know how it is. I could practically hear her screaming through the phone. It was beautiful. The drive home took about 20 minutes, and my phone didn't stop buzzing the entire time. I ignored it. Let her vent into the void. Let her fill up my text messages with her outrage and her disbelief and her wounded pride. I'd read them later when I had a drink in my hand and could fully appreciate the poetry of someone who'd spent years making me feel small, now experiencing what it felt like to be on the other side of that equation. When I got home, to my modest but paid-off condo that didn't require a country club membership to validate its worth, I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon. The good stuff. The bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion, and brother, this qualified. I sat down on my couch, put my feet up on the coffee table, and finally scrolled through the damage. 23 texts from Miranda. 23. Each one more desperate and angry than the last. They progressed through the 5 stages of grief in record time. Denial, this isn't real. Anger, you're a vindictive asshole. Bargaining, can we please just talk about this like adults? Depression, I can't believe you do this to me. And finally, acceptance, fine. You win. Are you happy now? Was I happy? That was the question, wasn't it? I took a sip of bourbon and thought about it. Really thought about it. 3 years ago, I'd signed divorce papers feeling like a failure. Like I hadn't been enough, hadn't done enough, hadn't been exciting or successful or interesting enough to keep my wife interested. I'd gone through months of questioning everything about myself, wondering what was wrong with me, why I wasn't good enough. And now here I sat, owner of multiple properties, running a successful business, having just suspended my ex-wife's country club membership in front of her entire social circle, and she was asking if I was happy. Yeah, I was pretty fucking happy. I didn't respond to her texts. What was there to say? Nothing I could text would hit as hard as what had already happened. Sometimes silence is the loudest response. Instead, I called Marcus and David, my business partners who'd been with me through the whole journey. They picked up on a 3-way call, and I didn't even have to say anything before Marcus was laughing. Bro, Patricia already called us, he said. Said you handled it perfectly. Patricia called you? I asked. Are you kidding? She was dying to tell someone. Said it was the most professional savage move she'd seen in 20 years of club management. David chimed in. She also said half the members want to buy you a drink, and the other half are terrified you're going to suspend them next. Good, I said. Little bit of fear keeps people honest. So how does it feel? Marcus asked. The big revenge moment. Was it everything you dreamed? I swirled the bourbon in my glass, watching the light catch the amber liquid. Honestly, it wasn't revenge. Revenge would have been buying the place just to kick them out. This was just consequences. They were rude to the owner. I responded appropriately. That's just business. Business with a side of poetic justice, David added. Maybe, I admitted. But mostly just business. We talked for another hour, going over some other properties we were looking at, discussing expansion plans, the usual work stuff. Normal life. Successful life. The kind of life I'd built while Miranda was busy posting Instagram photos of champagne brunches and Caribbean vacations. When I hung up, I looked at my phone one more time. 2 new texts from Miranda. We need to talk about this like adults. Please. That please sitting there all alone in its own text message. Small. Vulnerable. The way I'd felt so many times during our marriage when I was trying to get her to see me, to value me, to treat our relationship like it mattered. I thought about responding. Thought about being magnanimous in victory, about taking the high road, about showing her I was the bigger person. Then I remembered every time she'd made me feel inadequate, every subtle put down, every time she'd looked at me like I was disappointing her just by existing. I turned off my phone, finished my bourbon, and smiled. Some conversations aren't worth having. Some people don't deserve your time or your explanations or your emotional labor. Sometimes the best response is living well and letting them sit with their own choices. And man, was I living well. 2 days after the great terrace meltdown of Westwood Hills. Yeah, I was calling it that now because it deserved a title. I was sitting in my home office, minding my own business, working through some renovation proposals for another property we'd just acquired, when my email dinged with the kind of professional subject line that immediately tells you someone's lawyer is about to waste everyone's time. Formal complaint. Preston Family versus Harrison Hospitality Group. I sat back in my chair and actually laughed out loud. Of course they were doing this. Because people like Miranda and Todd don't just accept consequences like normal humans. They lawyer up and try to make their problems everyone else's problems. It's like their default setting when reality doesn't align with their expectations. I opened the email and started reading, and with each paragraph, my smile got wider. This was comedy gold. This was better than anything on Netflix. This was a masterclass in how rich people think the legal system is their personal complaint department. The complaint, sent from some fancy law firm with 3 last names and probably offices in a building with a doorman, cited emotional distress and abuse of power as the primary grievances. Apparently, my decision to suspend their membership had caused Miranda severe psychological harm and had damaged their standing in the community. Todd claimed he'd suffered reputational injury, and that my actions were retaliatory and vindictive in nature. Retaliatory and vindictive. Like those were bad things when someone tried to have you thrown out of your own property. The letter went on for pages. Literally 6 pages of legal jargon that could have been summarized as, "Our clients are mad that they experienced consequences for their actions. Please make the bad man apologize and give us money." They were demanding reinstatement of their membership with a formal apology, compensation for emotional damages to the tune of $50,000, because apparently that's what hurt feelings cost these days, and a guarantee that I would have no further direct contact or involvement with the Preston family's membership status. That last part really got me. They wanted me to own the club, but not be allowed to make decisions about their membership. That's like buying a restaurant and being told you can't decide which customers to serve. The audacity was almost impressive. I forwarded the email to our legal team with a subject line that just said, LOL. Within an hour, I had 3 lawyers on a conference call, and I could hear at least 2 of them trying not to laugh. Jennifer Park, our lead attorney and a woman who'd seen every kind of frivolous lawsuit in her 20-year career, was the first to speak. Okay, so I've read through this entire complaint, and I have thoughts. Please share, I said, leaning back in my chair and putting my feet up on the desk because this was about to be entertaining. First thought, this is hilarious. Second thought, this is completely without merit. Third thought, we're going to have so much fun destroying this. She paused. Should I be concerned that I'm enjoying this as much as I am? Embrace it, I said. Life's too short not to enjoy watching entitled people learn that lawyers can't actually fix stupid. David Chun, one of our other attorneys, jumped in. I've pulled all the documentation from the incident. Security footage, witness statements from other members, Patricia's incident report, their membership contract with the behavioral clause they signed. And this is my favorite part. A complaint log showing 7 previous incidents involving the Preston family. 7. I sat up. What kind of incidents? Oh, it's good, David said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Complaints about them being rude to staff, demanding special treatment, making other members uncomfortable with loud arguments, Todd getting into a verbal altercation with another member over a parking spot. There's even one from last year where Miranda allegedly threw a drink at a waiter because her salad had the wrong dressing. She threw a drink at someone? I couldn't believe it. Actually, yes, I could. That tracked perfectly with the Miranda I knew. According to 3 witnesses, yes. The previous management gave them a warning but didn't suspend them because, and I quote, they're high-paying members and we can't afford to lose the revenue. Well, I said, we're not the previous management, are we? Jennifer laughed. No, we are not. Okay, here's what I'm thinking. We respond with a comprehensive report documenting every single incident, every complaint, every piece of evidence showing that the suspension was not only justified but arguably should have happened sooner. We cite the behavioral clause in their membership contract that they signed. We include the security footage of them causing a scene on the terrace. And we very politely tell them that if they'd like to pursue legal action, we'll see them in court where all of this becomes public record. I love it, I said. How long will that take? Oh, we can have it done by end of day tomorrow. I'm motivated. This is the kind of case that reminds me why I went to law school, to tell rich people that money doesn't exempt them from basic human decency. You're my favorite lawyer, I told her. I know, she replied. Now, one more thing. They're claiming emotional distress. To prove that, they need to show evidence of actual psychological harm. Therapy records, doctor's notes, that kind of thing. Do you think they have any of that? I thought about Miranda's Instagram, which I checked once or twice. Okay, maybe more than twice, since the incident. She'd posted a photo yesterday of her and Todd at some restaurant, smiling and holding wine glasses, with a caption about not letting negativity bring us down. Pretty sure her social media posts showing her living her best life are going to undermine the whole severe psychological harm argument, I said. Oh my God, please tell me you screenshot those, Jennifer said. Way ahead of you. You're my favorite client. The next day, our legal team sent their response. 38 pages. 38 glorious pages of documentation, legal precedent, contractual obligations, and a very professional way of saying, your clients screwed up and are now facing consequences. Please grow up. The response included security footage of the entire terrace incident, timestamp and all, transcripts of exactly what was said by all parties, witness statements from 6 other members who were present, the behavioral clause from the membership contract, highlighted, the log of 7 previous complaints against the Preston family, documentation of similar suspensions at other clubs for similar behavior. A very detailed explanation of how property owners have the right to refuse service. Screenshots of Miranda's social media posts demonstrating she was not, in fact, suffering from severe psychological harm. My personal favorite, a copy of the club's dress code policy, with a note that I had technically violated it, which made their attempt to have me removed even more ironic since they were citing rules they themselves frequently ignored. The final paragraph was a work of art. Jennifer had written it herself, and it basically said, "Your clients attempted to have the property owner removed from his own establishment based on their incorrect assumption that he didn't belong there. When corrected, they responded with hostility and entitlement." The suspension stance. If you wish to pursue litigation, we welcome discovery, as it will make public record the full history of your client's behavior at our establishment. We suggest you advise your clients to accept the consequences of their actions and use this 60-day suspension period to reflect on how to conduct themselves appropriately in the future. Professional. Devastating. Perfect. I bought Jennifer a bottle of very expensive scotch. The Preston family's lawyers responded 3 days later with a much shorter email that basically amounted to, "We're withdrawing the complaint." No explanation, no apology, just a terse notification that they wouldn't be pursuing legal action. I imagine their lawyers sitting them down and explaining exactly how badly this would go for them in court. I imagine Todd's face when he realized that all those previous incidents were documented and would become public record. I imagine Miranda finally understanding that throwing money at a problem doesn't work when the other side has just as much money and actual evidence. Case closed. Jennifer emailed me. Literally one of the easiest wins of my career. They took one look at our documentation and ran for the hills. Think they learned anything? I asked. Probably not, she replied. But they definitely learned not to mess with us. That night, I got one more text from Miranda. Don't know how she got my new number, but wealthy people have their ways. It was just one line. Can we talk privately? I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let her stew in whatever consequences she was dealing with. Part of me was curious about what she could possibly want to say now that the legal threat had failed spectacularly. I responded, sure, but we're something fancy. Wouldn't want to embarrass the owner. Petty? Absolutely. Satisfying. You have no idea. We scheduled a meeting for the following Sunday. Same place, same terrace, different power dynamic. And I was very much looking forward to it. Sunday morning rolled around with that crisp autumn air that makes everything feel like a fresh start, which was ironic considering I was about to have what would probably be the final conversation with my ex-wife. I got to the club early, before the brunch crowd descended, and sat at a table on the terrace with a view of the parking lot. Wanted to see her arrive. Wanted to watch her walk up those steps knowing that this time, she wasn't walking into her territory. She was walking into mine. She pulled up in Todd's Mercedes, because of course she was driving his car, probably some weird power move, or maybe he just didn't want to face me again. I didn't blame him. The guy had been humiliated enough for one lifetime. Miranda got out wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage, heels that clicked against the pavement like a countdown timer, and sunglasses that covered half her face. The uniform of someone trying very hard to look like they have their life together. I watched her climb the terrace steps, watched her pause at the top when she saw me sitting there, coffee already ordered, looking completely at ease in my navy polo and jeans. Still not club attire, but then again, dress codes are more like suggestions when you own the place. She walked over slowly, and I could see her hands shaking slightly even from a distance. Good. She should be nervous. She should feel at least a fraction of the anxiety she'd caused me over the years. Thanks for meeting me, she said quietly, sliding into the chair across from me. Her voice was different, smaller. The bravado was gone, stripped away by 2 weeks of suspension and a failed lawsuit. Figured we should talk, I said, keeping my tone neutral. Clear the air. All that mature adult stuff people are supposed to do. She took off her sunglasses, and I saw her eyes were puffy, like she'd been crying or not sleeping or both. Part of me, a very small part, felt a twinge of something that might have been sympathy. But then I remembered 5 years of being made to feel inadequate, and that twinge evaporated pretty damn quick. You didn't have to humiliate me, she said, her voice cracking slightly. Not like that. Not in front of everyone. I took a sip of my coffee, let her words hang in the air for a second. You're right, I said finally. I didn't have to. But you spent years doing it to me, Miranda. Years of making me feel like I wasn't good enough, wasn't exciting enough, wasn't worth your time. So yeah, maybe I didn't have to humiliate you. But consider it symmetrical therapy. She flinched. I never meant to make you feel that way. Didn't you, though? I leaned forward slightly. Every time you introduced me as your husband with that apologetic tone in your voice, every time you told people I was in property management, like you were admitting I had a disease, every time you compared me to your friends' husbands and found me lacking, you absolutely meant it, Miranda. You just didn't think I was paying attention. I was unhappy, she said weakly, like that explained everything. So was I replied. Difference is, I tried to fix it. You just traded it in for a newer model. She looked down at her hands, those perfectly manicured nails that probably required weekly maintenance. I thought Todd was what I wanted. The lifestyle, the money, the excitement. And now, she laughed, but it was bitter. Now I'm married to a man who cares more about his stock portfolio than anything else. Who treats me like another asset he acquired. Who? She trailed off, shaking her head. It doesn't matter. It kind of does, I said. You left me because you thought you were upgrading. You thought reliability and steadiness were bugs, not features. You thought the grass was greener. So what happened? Did you find out that AstroTurf isn't actually better than real grass? She looked up at me, and for a second I saw the woman I'd married. Not the social climbing, status-obsessed version she'd become, but the person underneath all that. You've changed, she said softly. I had to, I replied. When someone tells you you're not good enough for 3 years straight, you have two choices. You can believe them and shrink, or you can prove them wrong and grow. I chose option B. I never said you weren't good enough. Miranda, those were literally your exact words when you left. I can't be married to someone who isn't good enough for the life I want. Don't rewrite history now that it's inconvenient. She went quiet, because she knew I was right. She'd said it. I'd heard it. We both remembered it. For what it's worth, she said after a long pause, I was wrong. About you. About what mattered. About everything, really. That's a start, I acknowledged. But it doesn't undo 3 years of damage. It doesn't erase how you made me feel. And it definitely doesn't change the fact that you tried to have me kicked out of my own property 2 weeks ago. I didn't know. You didn't ask, I interrupted. You assumed. You saw what you expected to see. Your boring ex-husband who couldn't possibly have made something of himself, and you acted accordingly. That's on you, Miranda. That's all on you. She looked like she might cry again, and part of me felt bad about that. But the larger part of me, the part that had spent 3 years rebuilding himself from the ground up, felt like this conversation was necessary. Like lancing a wound that had been festering too long. So what now? She asked quietly. Are you going to let us back in? After the 60 days? I thought about it. Really thought about it. I could ban them permanently, could make sure they never set foot in this club again. That would be satisfying in a petty, vindictive way. Or I could let them back in, let them see me here regularly, let them live with the knowledge that they were guests in my house. That depends, I said finally. Are you going to behave like an adult? Are you going to treat the staff with respect? Are you going to remember that being a member here is a privilege, not a right? Yes, she said quickly. Yes, we will. I promise. Then we'll see. I said. The suspension stands for the full 60 days. After that, Patricia will reach out about reinstatement. But understand this. One more incident, one more complaint, one more display of the entitled bullshit that got you suspended in the first place, and you're done. Permanently. No second chances. She nodded, understanding. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, I said, standing up. You haven't earned your way back in. As I turned to leave, Todd's Mercedes pulled back into the parking lot. He must have dropped her off and circled back, too scared to actually come up to the terrace himself. Can't say I blamed him. One more thing, I said, turning back to Miranda. Being underestimated? Turns out it's a great business plan. So thanks. Thanks for leaving when things got hard. Thanks for thinking I'd never amount to anything. Thanks for giving me the motivation to prove you wrong. I walked away before she could respond, heading through the marble lobby where staff members nodded at me with respect. Not the fake respect people give to rich assholes, but real respect earned through treating them like human beings and paying them fairly. Patricia caught me at the door. How'd it go? Better than expected, I said. Might let them back in after the 60 days. You're more forgiving than I would be, she said with a smile. Not forgiveness, I corrected. Strategy. Having them here, knowing what they know now, that's better than banning them. That's a constant reminder that they bet against the wrong guy. She laughed. Remind me never to underestimate you. Smart policy, I agreed. I walked out into the morning sun, and for the first time since the divorce, I felt genuinely at peace. Not because I'd gotten revenge, though that helped, but because I'd finally proven to myself what I'd always suspected, that I was never the problem. The problem was being with someone who couldn't see my worth. Now I own that worth. Literally and figuratively. And that felt better than any victory I could have imagined. 3 weeks after my conversation with Miranda, I found myself back at the club on another Sunday morning, but this time it wasn't for drama or confrontation or any kind of revenge plot. I was actually there to work, which sounds boring as hell, but was actually pretty satisfying. Marcus and David were flying in to review our quarterly numbers and discuss potential new acquisitions, and the club had a conference room that was way nicer than our actual office. Plus, the coffee was better. Significantly better. I was sitting in the lobby going through some documents when Todd walked in. Alone this time, no Miranda clutching his arm, no entourage of country club friends to back him up. Just Todd, looking significantly less confident than the last time I'd seen him, wearing a golf outfit that probably cost more than my first car, but somehow made him look smaller rather than impressive. He saw me and froze. I watched him go through the mental calculation, turn around and leave, or actually face the guy who'd publicly demolished his ego 3 weeks ago. To his credit, he didn't run. He walked over, slowly, like a man approaching a firing squad. Can we talk? He asked, his voice missing all that corporate peacock bravado I remembered. I looked up from my documents, taking my time. Sure. Have a seat. He sat down across from me, and I could see he'd rehearsed this. His hands were fidgeting. He kept clearing his throat. All the signs of someone who'd practiced a speech in the mirror and was now terrified of actually delivering it. I wanted to apologize, he said finally. For that day on the terrace. For trying to have you removed. For everything, really. I set down my documents, giving him my full attention. Okay, I'm listening. He took a breath. I was a dick. There's no other way to say it. I saw you in jeans and assumed you didn't belong, and I made a scene because I wanted to look important in front of Miranda and her mother. I didn't think, I just reacted, and I was completely out of line. You were, I agreed. But go on. And the lawsuit thing, that was stupid. Miranda was upset and her mother was in her ear about standing up for ourselves, and I just went along with it, because it was easier than telling them they were wrong. He rubbed his face. My lawyers explained, in very small words, exactly how badly that would have gone for us. Yeah, my lawyers enjoyed that, I said. One of them bought a celebratory bottle of champagne. Todd actually smiled a little at that. Look, I know you have no reason to believe me, but I am sorry. Not just because you own the place and could ban us permanently, but because it was shitty behavior and you didn't deserve it. I studied him for a moment. This wasn't the same guy who'd barked at me to leave 3 weeks ago. This was someone who'd actually been humbled, which is a rare sight among the country club set. Apology accepted, I said. But let me be clear, you screw up again, and I won't be nearly as understanding. I know, he said quickly. I get it. 1 strike, and we're out. Good. I paused, then decided to throw him a bone. For what it's worth, I didn't buy this place to screw with you and Miranda. That really was just a bonus feature. He laughed, and it sounded genuine. Some bonus feature. Miranda's barely slept since it happened. She's been spiraling about what everyone thinks, about our reputation, about. He trailed off, shaking his head. About the fact that her boring ex-husband ended up more successful than she expected? I offered. Yeah, he admitted. That's pretty much it. She keeps talking about how she had no idea you were capable of this, and I keep thinking, maybe she should have paid more attention. That surprised me. You saying that to make me feel better? Or do you actually mean it? Todd looked uncomfortable. Can I be honest with you? And this stays between us. Sure, I said, curious now. I think Miranda built this whole narrative about you in her head after the divorce. The failed husband, the guy who couldn't give her the life she wanted, The boring, reliable guy who'd never amount to much. And she needed that narrative to justify leaving you for me, you know? She needed you to be the wrong choice so that I could be the right one. And now that narrative's been completely destroyed, I said. Completely obliterated, he confirmed. And she's having a hard time reconciling the reality that you built something impressive with what she told herself about you. It's causing some issues. I shouldn't have felt satisfied hearing that, but I absolutely did. Issues between you two? He hesitated, then nodded. She keeps comparing. Keeps talking about how you were when you were together versus how you are now. Keeps wondering out loud if she made a mistake. He looked at me directly. I'm not going to lie, man. It sucks being the rebound guy who's starting to look like the downgrade. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. Todd, I'm going to tell you something, and you can take it or leave it. Miranda left me because I wasn't exciting enough, wasn't rich enough, wasn't whatever enough to match her fantasy. But here's the thing. I was always capable of this. The potential was always there. She just couldn't see it because she was too busy looking at the surface instead of the foundation. He was quiet, processing that. You want my advice? I continued. Stop trying to compete with a version of me that only exists in her head now. I'm not that guy anymore, and you're not me. Figure out what your relationship actually is instead of what she wishes it was. That's surprisingly helpful advice from someone whose life I tried to make miserable 3 weeks ago, he said. Yeah, well, I'm full of surprises, I said. Plus, holding grudges is exhausting, and I've got better things to do. Todd stood up, extending his hand. Thanks for not being as much of an asshole as I deserved. I shook his hand. Don't make me regret it. He left, and I went back to my documents, but I couldn't focus. The conversation had stirred up thoughts I'd been trying to avoid. Was I doing all this, the success, the club ownership, the whole trajectory of my life, to prove Miranda wrong? Or was I doing it for myself? Patricia found me 20 minutes later, still staring at the same page. You okay? She asked. You look contemplative. It's weird. Just thinking, I said, about why we do what we do. She sat down. This about the Preston situation? Kind of. Todd just apologized. Actually seemed genuine about it. Huh, she said. Character growth. Didn't see that coming. Right. I set down the documents. But it got me thinking. Did I buy this place because it was a good investment, or because I wanted to stick it to my ex-wife? Patricia considered that. Does it have to be one or the other? What do you mean? I mean, maybe it was both. Maybe you saw a good investment opportunity, and the fact that it was Miranda's social headquarters made it extra appealing. That doesn't make the business decision any less sound, and it doesn't make your success any less legitimate. She smiled. You're allowed to enjoy the irony while still being good at your job. When did you become so wise? I asked. I've been managing country clubs for 20 years. You see a lot of human nature in this job. Most of it is petty, some of it is beautiful, and all of it is entertaining if you have the right perspective. Marcus and David arrived an hour later, and we spent the afternoon going over numbers. The club was performing better than projected, membership applications were up, and we'd gotten requests from 2 other struggling clubs asking if we'd be interested in acquisition talks. Harrison Hospitality Group was officially on the map. You know what this means, right? Marcus said, grinning. We're going to need to hire more staff. Maybe get an actual office instead of working out of David's garage. The garage has character, David protested. The garage smells like paint thinner and broken dreams, Marcus countered. We can afford better now. We celebrated that night at the club's restaurant. The 3 of us plus Patricia, who'd become an unofficial 4th partner in spirit, if not in equity. Over steaks and wine that I didn't have to check the price of before ordering. We talked about the future. More acquisitions, bigger properties, maybe even franchising our management model to other clubs that needed help. It felt good. It felt earned. And most importantly, it felt like mine. Not something I was doing to prove anyone wrong, but something I was building because I was actually good at it. As the night wound down and Marcus and David headed to their hotel, I walked through the club one more time. Past the terrace where it had all gone down, through the lobby with its ridiculous chandeliers, around the grounds that we'd spent months improving. This place that had once represented everything I wasn't good enough for now represented everything I'd built. That's when I saw Miranda. She was alone, sitting on a bench near the garden, staring at nothing. She looked up when she heard my footsteps. Couldn't sleep? I asked. Something like that, she said quietly. What are you doing here so late? Had a meeting. Celebrated some good news. Just doing a final walkthrough before heading home. She nodded, then after a moment said, I saw you talking to Todd earlier. He apologized. It was surprisingly mature of him. He's been different since everything happened, she said. More thoughtful, less performative. She looked at me. You were right, about the symmetrical therapy thing. I needed to feel what I made you feel. I needed to understand. And do you? I asked. Understand. I think so, she said. I treated you like you weren't enough because I wasn't enough. I was so focused on appearances and status and what everyone else thought that I couldn't see what actually mattered. And by the time I figured it out, you'd already moved on. I sat down on the bench, keeping a respectful distance between us. For what it's worth, Miranda, I don't hate you. I did for a while, but it's exhausting and ultimately pointless. You made choices, I made choices, and here we are. Here we are, she repeated. You owning the club, me suspended from it. Todd apologizing, me questioning everything. She laughed softly. Not how I thought this chapter of my life would go. Life's funny that way, I said. You think you know how the story goes, and then plot twist. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, and I realized this was it. This was actual closure. Not the confrontational kind, not the revenge kind, but the quiet kind where two people who used to mean something to each other acknowledge that they've both moved on. I should go, I said, standing up. Got an early meeting tomorrow. Of course you do, she said with a small smile. The successful businessman with his empire to run. Something like that, I agreed. Take care of yourself, Miranda. You too, she said. And thank you for not making this worse than it had to be. I walked away, through the marble lobby one last time that night, past the staff who were cleaning up after the evening service. Patricia was still in her office, wrapping up paperwork. Heading out? She asked. Yeah, I said. Long day. Good day though, she said. We did good work here. You should be proud. I am, I said and meant it. I really am. I drove home that night with the windows down, letting the cool air clear my head. The city lights blurred past, and I thought about everything that had happened. The divorce, the rebuild, the acquisition, the confrontation, the resolution. All of it leading to this moment where I finally, genuinely felt at peace. Miranda had been wrong about me. Todd had been wrong about me. Hell, I'd probably been wrong about me for a while there. But I'd figured it out eventually. I'd learned that being underestimated isn't a curse, it's an opportunity. That steady and reliable aren't weaknesses, they're foundations. That sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just living well and building something you're proud of. The next morning, I woke up early, made coffee, and got ready for another day of work. Because that's what you do when you own multiple properties and run a growing hospitality company. You show up. You do the work. You make the boring, reliable, steady choices that compound over time into something extraordinary. And if your ex-wife happens to witness that extraordinary thing while sipping overpriced champagne at a club you own, well, that's just the cherry on top of a sundae you were going to enjoy anyway. I had closure. I had success. I had peace. And most importantly, I had proof that the quiet guy who keeps his head down and does the work, he's the one who ends up winning in the end. Game over. I won. Time to find the next challenge. At our divorce hearing, my wife boasted, I'll finally live off his fortune. The crowd laughed. I calmly passed the judge my envelope and whispered, check the date on her signature. Moments later, the judge laughed so hard, my wife turned ghost white. If you've never seen a courtroom turn into a full-blown comedy club, congratulations. You still have some faith left in the justice system. I, unfortunately, lost mine around the moment my soon-to-be ex-wife, Sabrina Hart, strutted into the courtroom like she was headlining a Vegas show. She had that smug, I'm about to win grin plastered on her face, a designer dress that probably cost more than my first car, and enough perfume to fumigate a small village. She sat down across from me, chin high, the very picture of arrogance wrapped in a $3,000 outfit. I could practically hear her internal monologue going, I'll finally get what I deserve. Spoiler alert. She did, just not the way she expected. Now, let's talk about her lawyer. The man looked like he practiced his lines in front of a mirror every morning. Slick hair, slicker suit, and a voice so self-important it could have narrated a political documentary. He stood up, cleared his throat dramatically, and announced, Your Honor, My client has been the emotional backbone of this marriage. I nearly snorted my coffee. Emotional backbone. Sabrina once cried because her Wi-Fi was slow. This woman treated minor inconveniences like national emergencies. I wanted to raise my hand and say, "Objection, Your Honor. He's confusing emotional backbone with drama queen in stilettos." But I stayed quiet. No need to rush the entertainment. I just leaned back in my chair, sipping that bad courthouse coffee like it was fine bourbon, and let the show unfold. Then it happened. Sabrina stood up. Oh, she was in her element. Theatrical, dramatic, voice quivering just enough to make it sound like pain, but not too much to mess up her lipstick. "Your Honor," she said, "I've been patient long enough. I will finally live off his fortune, like I deserve." And just like that, the courtroom went from quiet to reality TV chaos. Someone gasped. Someone else actually clapped. A guy in the back whispered, "Oh hell, this is better than Judge Judy." Even the bailiff looked up from his crossword puzzle. Meanwhile, I sat there calm as a monk on Prozac. I wasn't mad. I wasn't hurt. I was amused. See, I'd spent months preparing for this circus, collecting receipts, statements, and one little surprise that would turn her Oscar-worthy monologue into a blooper reel. I waited for her to finish her victim speech. She gestured a lot, like she was conducting a tragic orchestra. When she dropped the line, "He emotionally abandoned me," I almost asked if she was referring to the time I refused to attend her cousin's vision board party. Emotional abandonment, my foot. The judge, a patient woman named Judge Wong, kept adjusting her glasses like she was trying to process whether this was still a divorce hearing or an open mic night. Every few seconds, she'd glance at Sabrina, then at me, probably wondering how I hadn't just run into traffic by now. Sabrina's lawyer kept piling it on. "Your Honor, my client devoted her best years to this man." I wanted to say, she's 32. Her best years are still editing their resumes. But again, I stayed silent. I didn't even blink when he said, she was his emotional support. My eyes might have twitched, though. Emotional support? She once told me, "Babe, I can't talk about your bad day right now. I'm recharging my energy." Then came my turn. My lawyer gave me a small nod. "That you sure you're ready for this?" Nod. I smiled, opened the brown envelope in front of me, and whispered to the judge, "Ma'am," before I respond, "could you please check the date on her signature?" That one line changed everything. Judge Wong blinked, confused but curious. She took the document from my hand and started reading. Meanwhile, Sabrina looked at me like I'd just spoken ancient Greek. Her lawyer leaned in, probably praying I'd handed over an expired parking ticket or something. As the judge flipped the page, I leaned back again, hands folded. I didn't need to say a word. The silence in that room was electric. You could practically hear Sabrina's confidence deflating like a balloon at a toddler's birthday. Now, while she was panicking, I took a moment to reflect on how we even got here. Because honestly, 3 years ago, I thought she was the love of my life. The woman who made me laugh, who cooked, well, reheated, meals, who smiled like she actually believed in us. And now she was standing there, trying to convince a judge she was Mother Teresa with a shopping addiction. Her lawyer started sweating. Literally. His hair gel was losing the battle. Your Honor, perhaps this isn't relevant." Judge Wong raised a finger. "Mr. Lewis, let me finish reading." Now everyone was paying attention. Even the court reporter looked like she was typing faster just to keep up with the drama. I could see the confusion spreading across Sabrina's face like bad contour makeup. She knew something was wrong. I smiled gently, just enough to let her know the script had changed. Then came the moment. The judge's eyes widened slightly. She looked at Sabrina, then at the paper, then back at Sabrina. The silence stretched. Finally, she said, "Mrs. Hart, do you know what year this document was signed?" Sabrina straightened up, full confidence again. "Yes, ma'am. 2 years ago, right before we separated." Judge Wong pursed her lips, clearly trying not to smile. "Interesting," she said slowly. "Because according to this report, the pen used to sign this document didn't even exist 2 years ago." Boom. It was like someone had just announced free pizza in a college dorm. Heads turned. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. One old lady actually dropped her purse. Sabrina's lawyer looked like he'd just been told his car got towed. And me? I just sipped my coffee. Sabrina froze, blinking fast like maybe, just maybe, she could gaslight physics into changing its mind. That can't be right. she stammered. It's his word against mine. The judge chuckled. No, Mrs. Hart. It's science against yours. The courtroom erupted into whispers and muffled laughter. Even the bailiff's poker face cracked. Order, the judge called, but she was smiling too. Mr. Hart, where did you obtain this evidence? I shrugged. Just good record-keeping, Your Honor. Turns out, the emotional backbone of our marriage left a paper trail. The judge raised an eyebrow like she wanted to laugh, but had to pretend she was still running a courtroom. Sabrina sat down hard, eyes darting between her lawyer and me. She looked like a magician whose rabbit just sued her for fraud. Her lawyer tried one last desperate swing. Your Honor, surely we can disregard this minor discrepancy. Minor? Judge Wong snapped. Forgery is not a minor discrepancy, Mr. Lewis. This is a major legal issue. Sabrina's mouth dropped open like she couldn't believe her performance wasn't earning her sympathy. I almost felt bad. Almost. You'd think she'd stop there. But no, she doubled down. He's framing me. He's manipulating the evidence. Judge Wong sighed. Mrs. Hart, unless your husband invented time travel and used it exclusively to replace your pens, I think we're done here. Laughter. Real, loud, echoing laughter. The kind that fills the room and drowns out even the sound of Sabrina's dignity crumbling. I leaned back, smiling. Told you, honey, honesty's cheaper. That line got a few chuckles too. Even the stenographer coughed suspiciously into her sleeve. After that, the judge called for a short recess. As people filed out, strangers patted me on the shoulder like I'd just hit a game-winning shot. One guy even whispered, Bro, I don't know who you are, but you're my hero. Sabrina glared at me, eyes shooting daggers sharp enough to slice through titanium. You think this is funny? She hissed. I shrugged. A little. But don't worry, we're just getting to the good part. She stood up abruptly, heels clicking like gunfire on the marble floor, and stormed out of the courtroom. Her lawyer followed, muttering something about damage control. I stayed behind, calm, sipping the last of my now-cold coffee. The judge passed by, shaking her head slightly. Mr. Hart, she said, you've got the patience of a saint. I smiled. Thank you, Your Honor. Took a few years of marriage to develop it. She chuckled. Well, let's hope the rest of this hearing stays civil. Civil? I said. With Sabrina? Ma'am, we're halfway to fireworks. That earned me one last amused look before she walked off. As I packed my documents, I couldn't help thinking I'd survived round one. The circus had opened, the clowns had performed, and I'd just handed the ringmaster her own rope. It wasn't about revenge, not yet. It was about control. About showing her that calm doesn't mean weak, and silence doesn't mean stupid. I'd let her run her mouth, bask in her spotlight, and dig her own grave, all while smiling like a man who'd already written the ending. And believe me, the ending was going to be legendary. Because in this courtroom circus, the joke wasn't on me anymore. It was on the woman who thought she could turn lies into luxury, and forgot that sometimes karma wears a suit and carries an envelope. Let's rewind 3 years. Back to when I was still stupid enough to believe in meant to be. If I could go back in time, I'd slap that version of myself across the face with a prenup. It all started at a charity gala. Gala is a fancy word for rich people pretending to care while comparing watches. My business partner, Caleb, had dragged me there, insisting, Dude, you got a network. You'll meet investors, entrepreneurs, maybe even a decent woman. I didn't realize network meant dodging real estate agents who called themselves visionaries and influencers with podcast voices. The moment I walked in, I smelled overpriced perfume, saw too many tuxedos, and immediately wanted to fake a medical emergency. Then she appeared, Sabrina Hart. Or as my future therapist would later call her, the trigger. She was standing under the chandelier, laughing too loudly at something a man in Gucci loafers said. Her laugh had this melodic confidence, like she thought the world was background music for her life. She wasn't donating, of course. She was there for the free champagne and selfies with anyone who owned a yacht. I remember thinking, wow, she's gorgeous. Probably dangerous. Perfect combination. She wore a gold dress that shimmered every time she moved, and I swear the lighting adjusted itself just for her. If confidence were currency, she was already a billionaire. She caught me staring, because apparently my brain had temporarily gone offline, and she smirked. You look bored, she said, walking straight toward me. I smiled. I'm calculating my escape route. She laughed like I was the funniest man alive. That should have been my first red flag. No one finds me that funny. But at the time, I thought, finally, someone gets me. Turns out, she got me all right. My attention, my trust, and later, my money. We started talking, and within minutes, she had me hooked. She was witty, charming, and dangerously good at pretending to listen. I told her I worked in finance, ran a few companies on the side. She said, "Oh, I love ambitious men." I should have heard the cash register sound effect right there. She said she was a lifestyle consultant. Translation: she gave advice no one asked for, and somehow made money from it. I help people curate the best version of themselves, she said. I nodded, pretending to understand, while thinking, so? Instagram with invoices? We spent the rest of the night talking about everything from travel to coffee preferences to childhood dreams, though hers all involved being rich. She told me about her ex-boyfriends like she was reading Yelp reviews. They just couldn't keep up, she said. I laughed. I'm pretty fast, I replied. And that, apparently, was the bait. The night ended with her giving me her number, written neatly on a cocktail napkin, like a vintage move from a rom-com. Text me, she said, before I forget your face. I remember thinking, oh, she's different. Spoiler, she was not. Our first date was 2 days later at a rooftop bar she picked. The kind of place that charged $20 for a drink and made you feel guilty for not knowing the bartender's life story. She showed up late, of course, but when she arrived, she made the entire bar look like it existed just for her entrance. Heads turned. Men adjusted their ties. Women rolled their eyes. And me? I was already halfway to being a cautionary tale. Sorry, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Traffic was insane. A protest or something. Against what? I asked. She sipped her martini. Probably bad vibes. I laughed. Again, I didn't know I was auditioning for the role of gullible husband. We talked about our goals. I said I wanted to build generational wealth. She said she wanted to be emotionally fulfilled in a penthouse with good lighting. I thought it was a joke. It wasn't. But she was magnetic. The kind of person who could make you forget logic. I found myself opening up, telling her about my family, my business struggles, even my fear of public speaking. She nodded like she cared, then said, "You'd be great on TV, though. You've got that calm CEO energy." If confidence were flattery, I was overdosing. By the third date, I was done for. She started texting me good morning memes and sending me selfies captioned, "Thinking of you," which I later realized she probably sent to her followers too. She'd call me at night and talk about her dreams, moving to LA, launching her brand, maybe getting into luxury wellness. I didn't even know what that meant, but I kept nodding like a supportive idiot. Then came the question that should have made me run. "So, do you believe in signs?" she asked one evening while we were eating sushi. "Like zodiac signs?" "No," she said. "Like fate. The universe. You and I meeting. It's not random." "Sure," I said. "Maybe the universe just wanted me to overpay for dinner." She giggled, touched my hand, and I swear my brain shut down for a full 3 seconds. She had that power, the kind of manipulative charm that made you think chaos was romance. A month later, we were inseparable. She moved into my apartment temporarily, which, as it turns out, is ex-wife code for permanently. Her stuff started multiplying. First a toothbrush, then a drawer, then half the closet, and eventually my sanity. My friends tried to warn me. Caleb said, "Man, she's bad news." "I can feel it." I laughed. "You're single, Caleb. Everything looks bad when you eat microwave dinners." Even my mother hinted. "She's confident." Maybe too confident. But I was love drunk. I told myself she was misunderstood, ambitious, passionate. What she actually was. Professionally delusional. She had this thing where she'd post pictures of us on Instagram with captions like, "Manifesting love and success with my king." Meanwhile, I was just trying to finish my morning coffee. Her followers ate it up. #couple goals, #power love, #grateful. If I'd known the hashtags would age like spoiled milk, I'd have deactivated my account. Then came the big moment, meeting her parents. They lived in a mansion that screamed, "We inherited this and never let anyone forget it." Her mom was all pearls and Botox. Her dad looked like he hadn't smiled since the Bush administration. Dinner was lobster and judgment. Her dad asked, "So what do you do, Daniel?" "I own a few companies," I said. Sabrina cut in. He's being modest, Daddy. He's basically a genius. I smiled awkwardly, not realizing that in her family, genius meant walking ATM. By dessert, her mom was already calling me sweetheart, and her dad was giving me investment advice I didn't ask for. As we left, Sabrina whispered, "They adore you." "They adore my income," I said. She laughed. "Same thing, babe. I should have run then." But no, I thought she was joking. That's the problem with dating someone who blurs the line between humor and horror. You can't tell when they mean it. 3 months later, we were talking marriage. She wanted a small wedding, intimate and elegant. Translation: a 200-person event with a drone photographer and a dress that needed its own zip code. When I proposed, she cried. Beautiful, cinematic tears. "You're my dream come true," she whispered. Looking back, I think she meant financial dream. Friends congratulated me. My mom cried happy tears. Caleb just sighed and said, "All right, man, but don't say I didn't warn you." For a while, things were perfect, in the way a fake Gucci bag looks perfect until it rains. She laughed at my jokes, cooked occasionally, by which I mean she ordered takeout, and made me feel like I was the center of her world. But there were cracks, small ones at first. She'd say things like, "You should dress better for meetings. You're representing both of us." Or, "Why don't we go to Monaco this summer? It's so us." Us, I said once. "We've been to Costco more times than anywhere romantic." She laughed. Exactly. Balance. Her charm was intoxicating, but beneath it, there was always this low hum of entitlement. She didn't want a partner. She wanted a platform. And I was the perfect launch pad. Still, I ignored it. Because love, as they say, makes you blind and stupid and financially vulnerable. The night before our wedding, she texted me, "This is the happiest day of my life." I should have replied, "Yeah, mine too for now." But instead, I sent a heart emoji. And just like that, I sealed my fate, not with a kiss, but with a swipe. Because love at first sight might be rare, but love at first swipe? That's just the opening act of a really expensive comedy. Our wedding day looked perfect if you were scrolling through Instagram. Every detail screamed love story. But if you turned the volume up, you'd hear the faint sound of stress, panic, and someone whispering, "Can someone find the florist before Sabrina commits a felony?" The ceremony was held at this lakefront estate she found through an influencer's blog. It had white roses, chandeliers hanging from trees, and a champagne tower that looked like it could feed a small army. Sabrina wanted timeless elegance, which apparently meant hiring a drone to film us walking down the aisle in slow motion. My only job was to show up, smile, and not blink too much for the photos. Sabrina, of course, looked breathtaking. She always did. Her dress was so detailed it probably had its own mortgage. As she walked toward me, all eyes were on her, especially hers, since she subtly angled her face toward the nearest camera. I swear, when the officiant said, "Do you take this man?" she made direct eye contact with the wedding photographer. She cried when I said, "I do." It looked beautiful on camera. I later found out she wasn't crying because of love or emotion. She was crying because her makeup artist forgot waterproof mascara. Half her tears were emotional. The other half were cosmetic disaster. But man, the crowd ate it up. People were dabbing their eyes, whispering, "She's so genuine." If only sincerity could be airbrushed. The honeymoon was her idea. Paris, of course. For the culture, she said. By culture, she meant designer shopping and croissant selfies. I wanted to explore museums and eat local food. She wanted to chase Instagram lighting. Our first argument happened outside the Louvre when I suggested we skip the line. "Daniel," she said, clutching her designer purse like it was a fragile pet, "we can't skip the Louvre. How else will people know we were in Paris?" I said, "Maybe buy the plane tickets?" She glared at me like I'd just insulted her ancestors. "You don't get it. It's about the experience." The experience of waiting in line for 3 hours? "Yes," she said seriously, "the vibe." That was when I realized my wife didn't just live life, she curated it. Every breakfast, every outfit, every photo had to pass the aesthetic check. If the coffee foam wasn't perfect, she'd send it back. If the Eiffel Tower lighting wasn't flattering, we'd try again tomorrow. Our hotel suite looked like something out of a travel ad. She made me film a video where I opened the door and acted surprised by the view. We did 6 takes. "You're not reacting naturally enough," she said, adjusting her ring so it caught the sunlight. Sabrina, I said, I'm reacting like a man who just spent $8,000 for a week of unpaid acting. She ignored me. Okay, one more, but this time smile like you actually love me. I blinked. You mean smile like I'm married to you? She sighed. God, you're impossible. When we got back home, our wedding photos broke the internet, or at least her corner of it. The perfect couple, people commented. Fairy tale love. My phone buzzed all day from tags, reposts, and heart emojis. Every time I looked at her, she was glued to her screen, replying to comments like a celebrity thanking fans. At first, I didn't mind. I figured it made her happy, and happy wife equals peaceful life. But slowly, it started to feel like our relationship wasn't real unless strangers approved of it. One night, we were eating takeout sushi on the couch, just relaxing, when she looked at me and said, we should post a date night picture. I glanced around. The room was dim, there were soy sauce stains on the table, and I was wearing pajama pants. Why? I asked. We're literally living the moment. She gasped. That's not the point, Daniel. It's not about living the moment. It's about sharing it. You know cavemen never shared their moments, and they survived, right? She rolled her eyes. You're so old-fashioned. Thanks, I said. I'll add that to my list of compliments from people who've never been off Wi-Fi. Then she dropped the question. Why don't we merge our bank accounts? It's more romantic. That sentence hit me harder than espresso on an empty stomach. I blinked. Romantic? Of course, she said. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is ours. I smiled. So mathematically, what's mine is still yours. She laughed, the kind of laugh that sounds cute until you realize it's rehearsed. Don't overthink it, babe. You trust me, right? I did trust her, or at least I wanted to. That's the thing about people like Sabrina. They sell sincerity like perfume. It smells good until you realize it's all alcohol underneath. A few weeks later, she started pushing the influencer angle harder. People love us, Daniel. We could totally be a brand. A brand. I repeated, mid-bite of my cereal. Yes, she said. Like the hearts. Our life, our style, our story. Our story. Exactly. Couples like us make six figures just for showing how happy they are. We already are happy. Why not monetize it? I choked on my cereal. You want to turn our marriage into a sponsorship deal? She smiled sweetly. It's not selling out. It's storytelling. Yeah, I muttered, until we need to stage an argument for engagement. She gave me that warning look, the one that meant, smile for the camera, or I'll emotionally bankrupt you. So I played along. I appeared in her videos, held her hand at brunch, smiled at strangers commenting #goals. It wasn't love anymore, it was performance art. My buddies noticed the change. Caleb said, Dude, every time I see your face online, you look like a hostage blinking in Morse code. I laughed it off. It's fine, man. Happy wife, happy life. He smirked. Yeah, well, unhappy bank account, unhappy future. He wasn't wrong. Sabrina's definition of love language was spending money in mine. She called it investing in us. When she wanted a $4,000 handbag, it was symbolic of commitment. When she wanted a new car, it was an emotional necessity. Meanwhile, I started feeling like a background character in my own life. Every day was about what looked perfect, not what felt right. We didn't have conversations. We had content planning meetings. Once, during a dinner with friends, I tried to bring up something serious about work stress. Before I could finish, she cut me off with a bright smile. Don't worry about him, guys. He's just dramatic when Mercury's in retrograde. Everyone laughed. I smiled too, but inside I was shrinking. It's a strange thing, to be adored publicly and ignored privately. By year one, the highlight reel had cracks. Behind the scenes, our fights were becoming regular episodes. You're never present, she'd accuse. I'm literally here. I'd argue. Physically, yes, she said. But emotionally, you're not reacting to my captions anymore. I blinked. Captions? Exactly, she said, like she'd made an airtight point. Her followers started noticing too. You guys don't post as much, they commented. Are you okay? We weren't. But the show had to go on. Then came the moment that sealed it for me. One afternoon, I came home early from work and found her in the living room, surrounded by ring lights, posing in a silk robe. She looked gorgeous, sure, but she was fake crying into a wine glass. Sabrina? I asked. Everything okay? She jumped. Daniel, you're not supposed to be here yet. What's going on? She sniffed dramatically. It's for a post. Coping with heartbreak and healing through self-love. Heartbreak. I repeated. We literally just had lunch together. She shrugged. It's called engagement, Daniel. I stared at her, realizing the truth. My marriage wasn't a partnership. It was a marketing campaign. That night, as I lay in bed next to her scrolling through her newest, raw, emotional post, I noticed one comment that summed it up perfectly. Wow, someone wrote. You're living every woman's dream. And there it was, the cruel irony. To the world, she was a dream. To me, she was an endless subscription I couldn't cancel. But I smiled anyway, because back then, I still believed maybe she'd change. Maybe we'd find something real behind the filters. I didn't know yet that the only thing real about our marriage was the debt that came with it. Marriage teaches you a lot of things. Patience, compromise, the exact point when love turns into math. You know, when you start counting credit card charges and wondering if forever was supposed to come with monthly interest. It started on a Tuesday. Funny how disasters love Tuesdays, just boring enough that your guard is down. I was sipping my coffee, scrolling through emails, and feeling almost human when I saw it. A fraud alert notification from my bank. My heart stopped for 2 seconds. Fraud. Had someone hacked my account? Then I read the details. The transactions weren't from Russia or some shady crypto exchange. No, they were from a place called Revive Wellness Spa, the Silk Edit, and my personal favorite, Soul Retreat Dubai. Combined total, $89,672.49. I stared at the screen like it was written in hieroglyphics. There has to be a mistake, I whispered. The universe, somewhere, laughed. Sabrina walked into the kitchen just then, humming, wearing her silk robe like she was starring in a commercial for Delusion. She kissed me on the cheek. Morning, babe. You look tense. Oh, I'm fine, I said. Just looking at some light reading, bank statements. She froze for half a second, then smiled like a professional liar. Oh, those. I meant to tell you. I've been investing in myself. I blinked. Investing? Yeah, she said cheerfully, pouring almond milk into her coffee. Mental health. Skincare. Self-care retreats. You always say I deserve the best. Right? I said slowly. But I meant food that isn't photographed and maybe a gym membership, not a financial crime spree. She sighed dramatically, like I'd just insulted art. Daniel, you just don't understand me. Oh, I understand plenty. What I don't understand is how you managed to accidentally spend $90,000 in 3 months. She waved a manicured hand. You're being dramatic. It's not like I bought a car. Technically, you bought 3 cars worth of spa treatments. Her expression hardened. I needed it. You have no idea how stressful it is maintaining our image. Our image. I repeated. You mean your Instagram highlight reel? She crossed her arms. That's not fair. I leaned back, trying to keep my voice calm. Fair? Sabrina, when I met you, you said you wanted to build a future, not finance a skincare empire. She scoffed. You make good money. What's the big deal? The big deal, I said, is that you spent almost 6 figures without telling me. That's not a marriage. That's embezzlement with wedding photos. She rolled her eyes. You're overreacting. I'll pay you back when my skincare line takes off. I actually laughed. Out loud. Your skincare line? The one with no products, no customers, and no business license. She glared. You're so negative. No, I'm realistic. There's a difference. She huffed and stormed off, slamming the bedroom door like punctuation. I sat there staring at my coffee, wondering if it was too early to replace it with whiskey. Later that night, I found her sitting cross-legged on the bed, surrounded by receipts and a color-coded vision board. At the top, in gold marker, she'd written, Sabrina Hart Beauty, a brand for women who deserve more. More what? I had no clue. She looked up, eyes wide like a child explaining why the house was on fire. See, I've been manifesting abundance, she said. I'm going to turn my platform into a movement. I rubbed my temples. Sabrina, your platform is built on my Amex. She ignored that. Once my followers see how confident and empowered I am, they'll want to buy the products I use. It's simple marketing. Except you don't sell anything. Not yet, she said brightly. That's why I needed the retreat, to realign my energy. Ah yes, I muttered. Because you can't launch a business without realigning in Dubai. She smiled, thinking I was supportive. I wasn't. Over the next few days, I tried to cool off. I told myself she was just impulsive, that she'd learn. Love makes you delusional. It convinces you that red flags are just passion. But then the credit card bills started rolling in like horror movie sequels. Revive Wellness, $12,000. Luxderm, $7,800. Vogue Spirit Academy, $5,400. Vogue Spirit Academy. What even was that? An Ivy League for narcissists. By week 2, I'd gone from disbelief to quiet fury. I stopped arguing and started planning. My lawyer, Daniela Cruz, was a friend from college. Sharp, calm, the kind of woman who could dismantle a person's ego with a smile. I called her. "Daniel," she said after hearing the story, "she's not just careless. She's strategic." I frowned. Strategic? She can't even spell receipt right. "That's the act," Daniela said. "She's testing boundaries. Once you tolerate one financial mess, she'll push for more. Watch her next move." And just like that, the next move came. A few nights later, Sabrina slid into bed beside me with that fake soft voice she used when she wanted something. "Babe," she whispered, "you've been so tense lately. I think you need to relax." "I'd relax if my money stopped disappearing," I said. She chuckled. "Oh, come on. You're making it sound worse than it is. Sabrina, we're one transaction away from bankruptcy." She ignored that, twirling a strand of hair. "I was thinking, what if we start a joint account? You know, to make budgeting easier." "Easier for who?" "For both of us," she said, smiling. "You're always so busy with work. Let me handle the day-to-day stuff. Bills, shopping, spa appointments." "Did you just list spa appointments as day-to-day stuff?" She smiled wider. "Self-care is survival, Daniel." I took a deep breath, channeling every ounce of patience left in my bloodstream. "Sabrina, if we merge accounts, we'll be self-caring ourselves into foreclosure." She pouted. "You don't trust me." "I'd love to," I said, "but I just watched you financially colonize my credit limit." Her lips tightened. "You're being cruel." "No," I said quietly. "I'm being awake." She stormed out again, slamming the door for dramatic effect. I swear, she treated doors like emotional punctuation marks. 2 days later, she posted a photo of herself on Instagram wearing a $4,000 robe, captioned, "Healing my energy." Some people just don't get it. She was right. I didn't get it. By that point, I started documenting everything: screenshots, receipts, messages. I wasn't planning revenge, not yet, but I was preparing for self-defense. Because if Sabrina had one consistent habit, it was turning her mistakes into my fault. Sure enough, a week later, she sat me down with her serious voice. "I think we need therapy." "Therapy?" I asked. "Yes," she said solemnly. "You've been so cold lately. You're projecting your stress onto me." "My stress?" I repeated. "You're the one treating my bank account like monopoly money." She frowned. "You always make it about money." "It is about money." "No, Daniel, it's about love. You've changed." I laughed loudly. "Yeah, love will do that when it comes with an itemized bill." She sniffled. "I just feel like you don't appreciate what I do for us." "Enlighten me," I said. "What exactly do you do for us?" She straightened. "I maintain our image. I make people admire us. That's valuable." I rubbed my forehead. "I'm sure the mortgage company will accept admiration as payment." Her eyes welled up, which used to work on me. "Not this time." "You're cruel," she whispered again, standing up dramatically. "You'll regret treating me like this." "Oh, I already do," I muttered. She gasped. "You're not funny. Neither is $90,000 in debt." She stomped off again. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room, lights low, calculator in hand, staring at the reality of what love had cost me, literally. 90 grand gone. For candles, creams, and retreats. And yet, a strange calm settled over me. Not despair, resolve. I realized that Sabrina's chaos thrived on reaction. She wanted me to yell, panic, lose control. But silence scared her more. So I went quiet. I stopped engaging in arguments. I smiled politely, kept track of everything, and waited. Because the thing about people like her, they always overplay their hand. And when they do, well, I was already building the trap. You know that feeling when something's off, but you can't quite explain it yet? Like when your favorite burger joint suddenly changes the sauce, and you keep eating it thinking, nah, maybe it's just me. That was my marriage at this point. Off, but not yet rotten enough to smell. It started one morning when I caught Sabrina in my home office. Now, Let me be clear, she had no business being in there. The office was sacred ground, the only space in the house that didn't smell like lavender candles or expensive regrets. I walked in quietly, coffee in hand, and there she was, hunched over my desk, rifling through folders like a raccoon in a recycling bin. Looking for your conscience? I asked, leaning on the doorframe. She froze mid-flip, the world's worst spy caught in 4K. Then she turned around, plastering on her best innocent face. Oh, I was just organizing your paperwork. By throwing it on the floor? She forced a laugh. You're so funny. Thanks. Now tell me what you're really doing before I start assuming you joined Ocean's 11. Her eyes darted toward the printer, then back to me. I was just printing something. For my skincare business. Ah, yes, I said, sipping my coffee. The one that hasn't legally existed since it was born? She glared at me, snatched a random paper off the desk, and stormed past me in a huff. But before she could leave, I noticed something. My property portfolio file was missing. That's when my internal alarm went from mild irritation to full DEFCON 1. That night, my phone buzzed. It was my lawyer, Daniela Cruz, the human embodiment of I told you so. Daniel, she said, her voice calm but sharp enough to cut through nonsense. Your wife's been asking around about marital property laws. I froze. She what? Apparently, she called my assistant pretending to be one of my clients. Asked if joint property applies to business assets. I groaned. You've got to be kidding me. Nope. I'm sending you a list of what to lock down immediately. Assets, accounts, contracts, the whole 9 yards. Appreciate it, Danny. She paused. And Daniel? Yeah. Don't confront her yet. Let her think she's smart. The more she believes she's in control, the easier it'll be to prove she's not. I chuckled. Got it. So I'm supposed to play dumb. You've had practice, she teased, then hung up. Touché. That night, I sat on the couch pretending to watch Netflix while my brain did Olympic-level math about how far Sabrina might go. The woman once cried over a broken nail like it was a national tragedy. Now she was apparently auditioning for a true crime documentary. A few days later, I started noticing her behavior shift. She was being nice. Too nice. Breakfast in bed, random compliments. That fake laugh she used when she wanted to soften me up. You've been working so hard, babe, she cooed. You deserve a break. Oh, really? I asked. What's the catch? She giggled. Can't a wife just spoil her husband? Not when the last thing you spoiled was my credit score. She rolled her eyes and went back to making avocado toast like she was auditioning for a cooking show. I had to hand it to her, though. She was good at pretending. Later that week, I walked into the living room and found her on a video call. She didn't see me at first. Yes, I understand, she was saying into her phone. He won't suspect a thing. I froze mid-step. Once I have the documents, she continued, we'll proceed with the transfer. Transfer? I coughed loudly. She jumped like she'd been electrocuted, spinning around to face me. Oh, I was just talking to a friend. Uh-huh. About what exactly? She fumbled. A charity thing. Which charity? The Save My Bank Account Foundation. She laughed too fast. You're such a comedian. I didn't respond. I just smiled, sat down, and kept my eyes on her. She squirmed like a cat on a hot stove. Within seconds, she muttered something about fresh air and bolted out of the room. That night, I called Daniela again. She's plotting something, I said. Something big. I figured, Daniela replied. I've already looped in Detective Mark Alvarez. He owes me a favor. Alvarez was an old friend of hers, a grizzled, sarcastic guy who looked like he'd seen every brand of human stupidity twice. 2 days later, Alvarez showed up at my house in a leather jacket and a smirk. So this is the infamous Mrs. Hart, he said, glancing at the framed wedding photo on the wall. She's got that I shop with other people's money sparkle in her eyes. Yeah, I said. It's her best feature. He chuckled, pulling out a notepad. All right, here's what we're gonna do. You act normal. I'll do some digging. If she's planning something, we'll catch her in the act. Catch her? He nodded. You'd be surprised how many people incriminate themselves trying to be clever. I smirked. Oh, trust me. I live with the queen of overconfidence. For the next week, I played my part perfectly. Smiled. Nodded. Laughed at her fake jokes. It was like living in a play where both actors knew the other was lying but kept performing anyway. Sabrina got bolder. One night, I saw her sneaking into my office again. I followed quietly, leaning in the doorway as she fiddled with the safe. Need help? I asked. She jumped, hiding a folder behind her back. I was cleaning. At midnight. I couldn't sleep. Yeah, neither can my bank accounts lately. Her lips tightened. You're paranoid. No, I said calmly. I'm married. She glared at me and stormed out, again. At this point, the doors in our house were suffering more trauma than both of us combined. The next morning, Alvarez called. Got something. She's been in contact with a family lawyer, someone who specializes in asset reallocation. Meaning, she's trying to figure out how to claim ownership of your company assets. Probably banking on you being dumb enough not to notice. I laughed bitterly. She really thinks I'd let her touch my company? Hey, he said, narcissists believe in two things: their own brilliance and your stupidity. Accurate. So we set the trap. I started leaving fake documents in my office, dummy contracts, fake bank statements, even a secret investment account labeled joint property transfer. I made sure they looked real enough to tempt her, but harmless enough not to backfire. Within days, she took the bait. I walked in one evening to find her grinning like a cat that found the cream. What's that? I asked casually. Oh, nothing, she said, tucking the folder under her arm. Just organizing things. Uh-huh. That night, I called Alvarez. She took it. He chuckled. Perfect. Let's see where she runs with it. The next day, while I was at work, Alvarez tailed her. He sent me a photo that made my stomach twist. Sabrina sitting across from her lawyer at a cafe, holding my fake documents. She's planning to file soon, Alvarez texted. Says she's got proof you agreed to joint ownership. I couldn't help but laugh. The woman who once Googled how to boil water was suddenly a legal mastermind. That night, when she came home, I played it cool. Hey babe, I said, smiling. How was your day? Oh, just errands, she said, smiling too brightly. Productive? The most. Good, I said. I love when you're motivated. She blinked, surprised by how calm I was. You're not mad. Mad? No. You said you're investing in us, right? Who am I to stop love from being productive? Her smile faltered just enough to make my day. Over the next week, I let her build her little empire of lies. She made copies, called advisors, and probably fantasized about buying a villa with my money. Meanwhile, I had every call recorded, every email forwarded, and every document timestamped by Alvarez's team. It was like watching a car drive toward a cliff while the driver yelled, I know what I'm doing. By the time Daniela finished compiling the evidence, it was bulletproof. She's done, Daniela said, handing me a sealed folder. All we need is for her to try submitting it. I smiled. Oh, she will. She can't resist an audience. And right on schedule, 2 days later, Sabrina strutted into court for the preliminary hearing, smiling, confident, and blissfully unaware that the pen she used to forge my signature was about to destroy her. There are moments in life when you realize the person you married isn't just dramatic. They're potentially auditioning for a true crime documentary. For me, that realization came on a Thursday morning, 9:42 a.m., when my wife waltzed into the living room, holding a stack of papers thicker than her moral compass. She was humming, smiling, wearing one of those smug little looks that said, I just solved world peace, but actually meant, I'm about to do something incredibly stupid. Sweetheart, she began, sliding the folder onto the coffee table. We need to talk business. That sentence alone should have come with a government warning. I looked up from my laptop. Business? As in your skincare empire that exists entirely on Canva. She ignored the jab, perched on the couch like she was negotiating a merger. You remember signing this, she said, sliding a set of documents toward me. I frowned. You're going to have to narrow it down. I've signed a lot of things in this marriage. Receipts, apologies, emotional waivers. She gave a rehearsed laugh, then tapped the paper dramatically. This one, our business partnership agreement. You signed it 6 months ago. I blinked. Partnership agreement. Yes, she said. Remember? You wanted to help fund my company, so you agreed to be a 50% shareholder. Interesting, I said slowly. Because 6 months ago, you were in Cabo realigning your chakras, and I was in Chicago paying for said chakras. Her smile flickered. You must have forgotten. We did it over dinner. You had wine. Oh, well in that case, I said, setting my coffee down. I'm sure I signed it right after I knighted you Queen of Narnia. Her face tightened. You're not taking this seriously. Oh, I'm taking it very seriously, I said, flipping through the pages. Because unless I've developed blackout-level memory loss, this, I pointed at my signature, isn't mine. She crossed her arms. You're accusing me of forging your name? I smiled thinly. No, I'm complimenting your calligraphy. For a second, she didn't say anything. Then she leaned back, smirking like she'd just outsmarted a toddler. Well, let's see what the judge thinks. Oh, there it was, the line that said she'd already planned the whole performance. I studied her for a moment, marveling at how calm she was. The woman could barely fry an egg without calling her mom. But here she was ready to challenge me in legal combat. All right, I said, standing. Let's play this out. Hypothetically, if I didn't sign this, and I didn't, how exactly do you plan to prove I did? Her smirk widened. You'll see. And with that, she sashayed out of the room like a Bond villain in heels. The moment she left, I called Detective Mark Alvarez. Mark, I said, you ever met someone so dumb they loop back around to impressive? He chuckled. What did she do now? She forged my signature on a business agreement. He whistled. Bold move. You sure it's fake? I'm positive. The loops on the D are wrong, and the pen pressure looks like it was signed by a caffeinated squirrel. He laughed again. All right, send me a copy. I'll have our forensic doc analyst take a look. Enter Maya Green, the queen of details and owner of more microscopes than friends. Maya had this eerie ability to tell what brand of pen someone used based on ink density. She was basically CSI for office supplies. Within a week, I had results that made me question whether Sabrina had ever even seen a real pen. Maya called me herself, voice gleeful. Mr. Hart, you're gonna love this. The signature's fake. Shocking, I deadpanned. How'd you tell? Well, she said. For starters, the pen used in the document wasn't even manufactured until 3 months after the date listed on the signature line. I blinked. You're saying she forged my name with a pen from the future? Exactly, she said cheerfully. Also, the pressure and stroke pattern match a female writer with smaller hand dynamics. Probably your wife. I couldn't help but laugh. She forged my name badly? Oh, terribly. Amateur hour. I thanked her, hung up, and called Mark. We've got her. Perfect, he said. Now the fun part, don't tell her. So I didn't. I acted normal. Happier than normal, even. Every time she pranced around the house rehearsing lines for whatever courtroom drama she thought she was starring in, I smiled like an idiot. Big week coming up, she said one morning. Make sure you clear your schedule. The lawyer's filing the paperwork. Oh, I'll be there, I said cheerfully. Front row. She winked. You'll thank me later. Oh, I was already thanking her in my head for providing free entertainment. That night, I met with Daniela and Mark to plan the reveal. We were in Daniela's office downtown, the kind of place with books you know no one's actually read, but they look intimidating. So, Daniela said, flipping through the file, we present the forensic report in court. Once the judge sees that the pen didn't exist at the time, she's toast. Mark grinned. You want me in the back for dramatic effect? Absolutely, I said. Bring popcorn. Daniela chuckled. You know, most people panic during divorce proceedings. Yeah, well, most people's wives don't hand them their own victory wrapped in forged paperwork. The next morning, Sabrina strutted through the house humming Beyoncé like she was the underdog hero of a movie only she was watching. She even practiced her surprised but brave face in the mirror. I watched from the hallway, sipping my coffee. You know, I said, for someone preparing for a legal battle, you're awfully calm. She turned, eyes gleaming. Confidence, darling. You should try it sometime. Oh, I have, I said. Usually right before karma clocks in. She didn't get the joke. She never did. The day before the hearing, she dropped one last bomb. You should know, she said casually over dinner. My lawyer says you don't stand a chance. Once the partnership is validated, half your company's assets are mine. I stabbed my steak a little too hard. Half, huh? Bull. She smirked. You built your empire with my support. My support? You mean emotional support or retail therapy support? She waved her fork dismissively. You're deflecting. From what? The fact that your legal strategy was written by a toddler with crayons. She sighed dramatically, taking another sip of wine. You'll see. The truth always comes out. You're absolutely right, I said, raising my glass. Cheers to that. The next morning, I dressed like I was going to brunch, not court, blue suit, calm smile, inner peace borrowed from pure pettiness. When we arrived, She strutted into the courthouse like she was on a red carpet, waving at imaginary cameras. Her lawyer, the same overly slick guy from earlier, grinned at her like they were about to win an Oscar. I took my seat beside Daniela. She leaned over and whispered, "You ready?" "Born ready," I said. The judge entered, same one as before, Judge Wong, whose tolerance for nonsense had already been tested by Sabrina once. She adjusted her glasses and sighed like she'd just remembered she'd seen this couple before. "Mrs. Hart," the judge began, "you claim Mr. Hart entered a partnership agreement transferring 50% ownership of his company to you. Is that correct?" Sabrina stood, poised and dramatic. "Yes, Your Honor. He signed it willingly." The judge nodded. "And Mr. Hart, you dispute this?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said calmly. "Because I didn't sign it. But I brought proof." Sabrina smirked. "Proof? What proof could you possibly?" "Your Honor," Daniela interrupted smoothly, handing over the folder. "Forensic report from document analyst Maya Green." Judge Wong flipped through the report, squinting. Then she blinked. Then she laughed. Actually laughed. The courtroom fell silent. Sabrina looked confused. "Is something funny?" Judge Wong cleared her throat, barely suppressing a grin. "Mrs. Hart, this report indicates that the pen used to sign this document wasn't manufactured until 3 months after the alleged date of signing." The crowd murmured. Sabrina's face turned the color of a canceled credit card. That's impossible." Daniela smiled sweetly. "Oh, it's possible. Just not legal." The judge couldn't hold it anymore. She chuckled outright. "I've seen my fair share of creative fraud, but this is truly ambitious." The courtroom erupted in laughter. Even the bailiff cracked a grin. Sabrina's lawyer whispered something frantically in her ear, probably, "Run." She glared at me, eyes blazing. "You set me up." I smiled. "You set yourself up. I just took notes." The judge raised her gavel. "Enough. Mrs. Hart, forging your spouse's signature on a legal document is a serious offense. I suggest you speak with your attorney, preferably one who doesn't approve time travel pens." I swear, even the stenographer snorted. As we exited, Mark was leaning against the wall outside, arms crossed, smirk firmly in place. Well, he said. "Guess the forgery queen just abdicated the throne." "Long live the petty king," I replied. Sabrina stormed past, muttering curses under her breath. Her lawyer trailed behind like a man reconsidering every life choice he'd ever made. Daniela handed me a fresh copy of the report. "Keep this," she said. "Frame it if you want." "Oh, I plan to," I said, right next to the marriage certificate, so I can see both sides of her handwriting. Patience. People talk about it like it's some kind of peaceful virtue. For me, it was a full-time job. After the forgery fiasco, you'd think Sabrina would have gone into hiding, maybe joined a silent retreat or at least a book club for the criminally delusional. But no, she doubled down. She started walking around the house like she was the misunderstood heroine in a movie where the audience was supposed to root for her redemption arc. Spoiler. There was no redemption arc coming. Detective Alvarez called it first. "Let her think she's winning," he told me over coffee one morning. "Narcissists love an audience. If she thinks the crowd's still cheering, she'll keep performing." He wasn't wrong. Sabrina strutted around like she was auditioning for the Real Housewives of Regret. She wore silk robes in the middle of the day, hummed show tunes while rearranging furniture that didn't need rearranging, and practiced her innocent smile in the mirror like she was training for a beauty pageant sponsored by Denial. One night, I caught her pacing in the hallway, phone in hand, whispering to someone. "He still thinks I don't know what I'm doing," she said. "Just wait." I stayed in the shadows, sipping my water, and whispered back to myself, "Oh, I'm waiting." Because that's what Operation Patience was, not revenge, not anger. It was waiting. Quiet, calculated waiting. The kind that makes the other person nervous because they can't tell whether you're planning a counterattack or a vacation. To sell the illusion, I played nice. I smiled. I cooked dinner. I even complimented her outfits again. "You look great, babe," I'd say, while she stood there wondering if I was being sarcastic. I was. She'd tilt her head, suspicious. "You're being sweet. Just trying to match your energy," I'd reply. That usually ended the conversation. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I was doing the real work. Daniela, my lawyer, had set up a secure file for all our documentation. Forged signatures, fake transactions, screenshots, you name it. Alvarez was running background checks on anyone she contacted. The man was relentless. She's poking around again, he texted one night. Talking to some random consultant about financial loopholes. Consultant, I replied. You mean her new scam buddy? He sent a laughing emoji. Let her cook. And so I did. I let her cook. Figuratively, of course, she couldn't actually cook to save her life. Her last attempt at pasta had ended with me Googling how to remove burnt tomato sauce from ceiling paint. Days turned into weeks. Sabrina grew more confident and careless. She'd leave receipts lying around from expensive lunches, start talking about new business ventures, and drop subtle hints like, "You'll regret underestimating me." I'd nod, smile, and say, "Probably." Inside, though, I was taking notes. Every lie, every half-truth, every unnecessary shopping spree. Patience wasn't just about waiting for her to fall. It was about giving her the rope to tie her own knot. One morning, she pranced into the kitchen in yoga pants and a blazer, her power outfit, as she called it. "I've decided to get my own lawyer," she announced, pouring herself a green smoothie that looked like blended envy. "Great idea," I said. "Make sure they're good with magic pens." She glared. "You're mocking me." "Only a little," I said. "I mean, it's hard not to when your last legal move got laughed out of court." She huffed, grabbed her purse, and stormed out. The door slammed so hard, one of the picture frames fell off the wall. Alvarez called 10 minutes later. "She's meeting someone downtown. Looks like another lawyer." "Want me to tail her?" "Please do," I said. "And make sure she sees you at least once." He laughed. "You're evil." "Efficient," I corrected. That evening, she came home furious. "Were you spying on me?" I feigned confusion. "What? Why would I do that?" "Don't play dumb. I saw that detective friend of yours at the cafe." I gasped dramatically. "You mean the public cafe that serves terrible espresso?" "Yeah, that's definitely my secret surveillance spot." She narrowed her eyes. "You're mocking me again." I smiled. "And you keep making it so easy." She stomped off, muttering something about revenge arcs and karma. I let her go, because the thing about Sabrina was that she couldn't stand still. She needed chaos to feel alive, attention to feel validated. So I gave her the illusion of both, the chaos of waiting and the spotlight of my silence. By week 3, she was unraveling. Her once perfect morning routines turned sloppy. The Instagram captions got passive-aggressive. "Some people think silence is power," she wrote one day. "But sometimes silence just means guilt." I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. I showed it to Daniela. "She's cracking," Daniela said, smirking. "Keep it up. The calmer you stay, the more she'll lose it." "Good," I said. "I've got enough screenshots for a Netflix miniseries already." Then, like clockwork, she tried to provoke me again. It was a Saturday morning. I was on the porch, reading, when she walked out with 2 suitcases. "I'm going to stay at a hotel," she announced. "I need space." "Perfect," I said without looking up. "Hotels have great Wi-Fi for your next scheme." She blinked. "You're not even going to ask why." "Oh, I know why," I said, turning a page. "You need an audience that claps when you play victim." Her jaw dropped. "You're such an ass." "Maybe," I said, "but I'm an ass with good credit." She stood there, seething, waiting for me to explode. I didn't. That silence hit her harder than any argument ever could. Finally, she stomped off, dragging her luggage dramatically down the steps. The moment her car left the driveway, I texted Alvarez. "She's gone." "Good," he replied. "Let's see where she ends up." Turns out, she checked into a fancy downtown hotel using my secondary credit card. Classic Sabrina, stealing with style. But what she didn't realize was that Alvarez already had alerts on all my accounts. Every transaction pinged us like a bell announcing her next dumb move. 3 days later, he called. "You're gonna love this. She's meeting a guy named Vincent, her so-called business consultant." Guess what he actually is? I'm afraid to ask. An ex-con. Fraud charges. Served time for forging documents. I laughed. She really has a type. Alvarez snorted. "Don't worry, we're documenting everything." Between him and her, this case is gift-wrapped. By now, Operation Patience had turned into Operation Enjoy the Show. I'd go to work, handle my company meetings, and then come home to check the Sabrina updates from Alvarez. Every report read like a soap opera script. Subject: met with Vincent. Ordered wine. Tried to flirt her way into a business deal. At one point, Alvarez even sent me a blurry photo of her whispering across a table. Caption this, he texted. I replied, when your get-rich-quick plan involves someone who still lives with their parole officer. Even Daniela started getting entertained. You're way too calm for a man in the middle of a divorce, she said during one meeting. I'm not divorcing a wife, I told her. I'm dismantling a scam. By the end of the month, the pattern was clear. Sabrina was gearing up for something bigger. Maybe another forged document, maybe a lawsuit, maybe an exclusive interview about her abusive ex-husband. She'd always loved rewriting history. That's when Daniela suggested we push things along. Let's file the final paperwork, she said. We have everything we need. She'll never see it coming. So we did. When the summons arrived at her hotel, Alvarez told me she looked like someone had unplugged her brain. She called me 12 times in an hour, left 6 voicemails ranging from fake sadness to pure rage. Daniel, one of them began in her overly practiced, hurt voice. I can't believe you'd betray me like this after everything I've done for us. After everything she'd done, I thought, scrolling through the charges she'd made just that morning, spa, boutique, champagne bar. The final voicemail was my favorite. You'll regret this, Daniel. You can't just embarrass me like this. I always come out on top. I played that message on speaker while pouring myself a drink. Sure, sweetheart, I said to no one. But even the best actors get written out of bad shows. The next morning, I met Alvarez and Daniela at a cafe to finalize the court strategy. Alvarez slid me a folder filled with photos, receipts, and transcribed calls. Everything's ready, he said. She thinks you're still clueless. She's bragging to Vincent that she's got one more move left. Daniela grinned. Perfect. Let her bring it to court. I leaned back, sipping my espresso. You know, I said, people always talk about revenge being sweet. But honestly, patience tastes better. Alvarez laughed. Yeah? What's it taste like? Like peace, I said, with a side of poetic justice. He raised his cup. To Operation Patience. I clinked my glass. And to the downfall of the forgery queen. Because in a few days, she'd learn what real patience looked like, the kind that waits quietly while karma catches up. And this time, I'd be front row, watching her empire of lies crumble in high definition. If there's one thing Sabrina loved more than money, it was an audience. So when her next court hearing came up, she didn't treat it like a legal proceeding. She treated it like the Met Gala of victimhood. I woke up that morning to find her in the living room, rehearsing lines in front of the mirror. No exaggeration, she had no cards. Your Honor, she said dramatically, clutching her chest. I've been through emotional devastation at the hands of a cold, manipulative man. She looked at her reflection, frowned, and shook her head. No, that sounds too strong. Make it softer. Like I'm crying but still hot. I leaned against the doorway with my coffee. Maybe add a slow blink and a fake sniffle for authenticity. She jumped. Jesus, Daniel. Don't sneak up on people like that. Sorry, I said deadpan. Didn't mean to interrupt your Broadway debut. She rolled her eyes and started packing her designer handbag, which, I should note, was probably worth more than the car she drove in with. You can mock me all you want, she said. But when this is over, I'll finally get what I deserve. Oh, I don't doubt that, I said. We drove to the courthouse in separate cars. Hers a luxury sedan she still somehow hadn't paid off. Mine the practical kind that doesn't need attention to feel validated. When I arrived, the parking lot was already buzzing. Reporters, onlookers, even a few randoms who clearly just came for the drama. Inside, the courtroom was packed. You'd think we were shooting a reality show. The bailiff had to tell people to quiet down twice. Sabrina entered 5 minutes late, on purpose, of course. She wanted the room's attention, and she got it. Her lawyer followed behind her carrying an overstuffed briefcase that was probably just filled with bad arguments and perfume samples. She looked immaculate, hair curled, makeup flawless, white suit tailored to perfection. The innocent angel look. I almost applauded her commitment to the role. If lying were an Olympic sport, she'd be holding gold medals in both singles and doubles. As she sat down, she glanced my way, smirking like she'd already won. Her lawyer patted her hand, whispering something about staying calm. Across the aisle, my own lawyer, Daniela, looked perfectly composed. Cool, collected, and probably already 3 steps ahead of Sabrina's little performance. When the judge entered, The same Judge Wong who had already endured one round of Sabrina's theatrics. The room fell silent. The woman looked exhausted, like she'd already aged a decade from our last case. "Let's keep this brief," she said, adjusting her glasses. "Mrs. Hart, you have the floor." And that's when it began. Sabrina stood up, cleared her throat, and launched into what I can only describe as a one-woman tragedy. "Your Honor," she began, her voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed. "I have suffered immensely. My husband, Daniel, has emotionally abandoned me, withheld financial support, and tried to tarnish my reputation." The audience murmured. Someone gasped. I'm pretty sure one lady in the back whispered, "Oh, poor thing," before immediately checking her phone. I sat perfectly still, sipping water like this was a matinee I'd already seen twice. Sabrina continued, pacing the courtroom like a motivational speaker who'd just lost her audience. "I gave everything to this marriage. My time, my love, my emotional labor. I wanted to raise my hand and ask, does emotional labor include charging spa trips to my credit card? But I restrained myself. Patience, Daniel. Patience." Then came the line that made me almost spit out my drink. "Your Honor, I only wish to live off what I rightfully earned, his fortune." The courtroom went silent. She realized what she'd just said too late. You could see the panic flash across her face like a glitch in the Matrix. Her lawyer's head dropped into his hands. Somewhere behind me, someone snorted. Even Judge Wong blinked. "You want to live off his fortune?" Sabrina stammered. "I mean, our fortune. The fortune we built together." I turned to Daniela and whispered, "Built together?" She once asked me how to turn on the printer. Sabrina's lawyer jumped in, desperate to save her. "What my client means, Your Honor, is that she contributed in non-financial ways, emotional support, companionship." Loud sighs during budget meetings, I muttered under my breath. The judge shot me a warning glance. I smiled politely. Her lawyer soldiered on. "Mrs. Hart was the emotional foundation of this marriage." Judge Wong looked skeptical. "I recall her previous case involved forged documents, correct?" Sabrina's smile twitched. "That was a misunderstanding." The judge nodded slowly. "I see." At that point, the entire room felt like it was holding back laughter. Even the stenographer's typing slowed down, probably because she didn't want to miss a word. Then came my turn. Daniela stood gracefully, walking to the center of the room. "Your Honor, my client will not make a speech today. We believe Mrs. Hart's statements, and her own previous court history, speak for themselves." Sabrina rolled her eyes. "Of course he won't speak. He never does. He hides behind his lawyer." I raised an eyebrow. "Well, I did try talking once, but apparently my signature wasn't convincing enough." The audience chuckled. The bailiff banged his gavel for order, but even he was smirking. Daniela handed the judge a folder. "However, for clarity, this is a full record of Mrs. Hart's recent spending and communications, including messages with a known ex-convict named Vincent, who advised her on how to transfer assets quietly." Sabrina's eyes widened. "That's private." "Actually," Daniela said sweetly, "it's evidence." The judge flipped through the papers, her expression growing more and more incredulous. "Mrs. Hart, you were in contact with this individual?" Sabrina fumbled. "He's a consultant." "A consultant who was arrested for wire fraud," Daniela added. The audience gasped again. Someone whispered, "This is better than Netflix." Sabrina looked around, realizing her carefully curated image was slipping. "This is harassment," she cried. Judge Wong sighed. "Mrs. Hart, please sit down before you embarrass yourself further." That was it. The audience couldn't hold it anymore. Soft laughter rippled through the room like a wave. Sabrina sat, fuming, her face an entire shade chart of rage. She glanced at me like she could set me on fire with her mind. I smiled back, serene as ever. The rest of the hearing went exactly as expected. Daniela calmly dismantled every claim Sabrina made, backed by receipts, reports, and time-stamped messages. By the time it ended, even Sabrina's lawyer looked like he was praying for early retirement. When the judge finally spoke, her tone was firm but amused. "Mrs. Hart, I recommend you stop watching courtroom dramas. They seem to be giving you the wrong impression of how reality works. Your case is dismissed." Gavel. Bang. Done. For a second, Sabrina didn't move. Then, slowly, she stood, straightened her blazer, and muttered, "This isn't over." I smiled. Oh, I think it is. The credits are literally rolling. The audience snickered. She stormed out, heels clicking like gunshots on the marble floor. Her lawyer followed, dragging his briefcase like a man carrying the weight of regret. Daniela packed up our files with her usual calm efficiency. Congratulations, she said. You survived Act 2 of the Sabrina Hart Show. I laughed. Let's hope it gets canceled before the finale. Alvarez, who'd been watching from the back like a proud director, walked up and patted my shoulder. That was art, my friend. Pure art. You didn't even have to raise your voice. Silence, I said, is the best revenge. It confuses them. He chuckled. You know what the best part is? She still thinks she's the main character. Let her, I said. She can star in whatever fantasy she wants. Just not in my life. As we walked out of the courthouse, a reporter approached with a microphone. Mr. Hart, any comment on today's outcome? I smiled for the cameras. Yeah, honesty's free. You should try it sometime. The clip went viral by evening. My phone blew up with texts from friends and strangers alike. Caleb, my business partner, sent a message that said, "Bro, you went full courtroom mic drop." I replied, "Had to." She kept turning my life into a circus. Figured I might as well run the show. That night, back home, I sat on the couch in total silence. No yelling, no accusations, no designer chaos, just peace. It felt weird at first, like my brain didn't know what to do without the noise. Then I laughed to myself. She'd wanted an audience, a story, a spectacle. Well, she got one. And I got something better, closure. The next morning, I found one of her old note cards on the kitchen counter. It read, "Remember, stay composed, look sympathetic." I smiled, crumpled it up, and tossed it into the trash. Because in the end, Sabrina didn't just lose the case. She lost her audience. There are few sounds more satisfying than the sound of karma catching up, and in my case, karma didn't whisper. It laughed, loudly, like a full-on comedy special sponsored by Poetic Justice. The morning of the final ruling felt like déjà vu. The courthouse was the same, the crowd was the same, but the energy was different. This time, I wasn't walking in as the accused. I was walking in as the man who'd already won. And I didn't even need to gloat. My silence did it for me. I showed up early, calm, coffee in hand, dressed in my navy suit, the unbothered but lethal uniform. Sabrina arrived 10 minutes late, of course, dragging her lawyer behind her like a reluctant pet. She looked flawless, as usual, hair curled, outfit pressed, confidence artificially inflated. The difference was that today, she looked nervous. The kind of nervous you can smell. She sat down, threw me a glare sharp enough to slice glass, and whispered something to her lawyer. He just nodded, probably praying she wouldn't start another monologue. Across the aisle, Daniela was all business. She had her tablet out, notes perfectly organized, coffee untouched, because professionals don't need caffeine when fueled by other people's stupidity. Detective Alvarez was sitting behind us, looking like a proud uncle at graduation. He gave me a small nod. When Judge Wong entered, everyone stood. The woman looked amused. That was my first clue that the day was about to be legendary. "Let's get this over with," she said, sighing as she adjusted her glasses. Mr. and Mrs. Hart, again. Sabrina shot to her feet, like she'd been waiting for her cue. "Your Honor," she began, voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed. "I'd like to say something before the proceedings." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Is it relevant, Mrs. Hart?" "Yes, Your Honor. I've been portrayed unfairly in this courtroom. I've been called manipulative, dishonest, even criminal. But I'm just a woman trying to survive after being emotionally destroyed by a man who—" "Stop." Judge Wong held up a hand. "Mrs. Hart, this is not an audition for a reality show. Please sit." The laughter started small, a few chuckles from the back row, then grew like wildfire. Even I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from losing it. Sabrina froze mid-sentence, color draining from her face. She sat down stiffly, whispering to her lawyer, "She's biased." Biased toward sanity, I muttered under my breath. Then came the moment we'd all been waiting for. Daniela stood, calm as ever. "Your Honor, before we proceed, I'd like to submit Exhibit B, the forensic handwriting report, along with documented evidence of communication between Mrs. Hart and a known fraud consultant." Sabrina's lawyer objected, voice cracking like he'd swallowed his nerves. "Objection irrelevant." "Overruled," Judge Wong said instantly, already flipping through the pages. And then it happened. The laugh. It started with a soft chuckle. Then the judge leaned back, shaking her head, and let out a laugh so loud the bailiff blinked. "This," she said between giggles, "is the most ridiculous fraud attempt I have ever seen." The room went silent, then erupted again in restrained laughter. Even the court clerk was smiling. Sabrina looked horrified. "Your Honor, that's private evidence." "No," the judge said, still laughing, "this is public stupidity. According to this report, the pen used to sign this document didn't exist when the signature was allegedly made. Mrs. Hart, did you borrow Doc Brown's DeLorean to time travel for your forgery?" The courtroom lost it. People were covering their mouths, shoulders shaking, even a few tears of laughter glistening. Alvarez leaned forward and whispered, "That's my new ringtone." Sabrina's lawyer tried to salvage the wreckage. "Your Honor, perhaps my client made an honest mistake." "An honest mistake?" The judge's eyebrows shot up. "Forging a business agreement with future technology is not a mistake, Mr. Lewis. It's a science fiction plot." More laughter. The stenographer actually paused typing to wipe her eyes. Sabrina turned red, gripping the edge of the table. "This is harassment," she shouted. "He set me up." The judge sighed, finally composing herself. "Mrs. Hart, the only thing your husband set up was a bank account you couldn't resist raiding. Now sit down before I hold you in contempt." The room went quiet for a beat, the kind of silence that makes humiliation echo louder. Sabrina sank into her chair, shaking her head, eyes glistening with tears that were definitely not from sadness, more like disbelief that her perfect victim act had collapsed. I stayed silent, hands folded, face calm. I didn't need to say a word. My calmness was killing her faster than any insult could. The judge cleared her throat. "Mr. Hart, you've been remarkably patient through this situation. Would you like to make a statement before I rule?" I stood, buttoned my jacket, and nodded respectfully. "Just one, Your Honor." She gestured. "Go ahead." I turned slightly, facing Sabrina. "For the record, I never wanted it to come to this. But I also didn't want to spend my life wondering if my wife was going to treat our marriage like a corporate heist. I hope this experience teaches her, and everyone watching, that honesty doesn't expire like a credit card." Judge Wong smiled. "Well said, Mr. Hart. Anything else?" "Yes," I said, pausing for effect. "I'd like to officially retire from the role of emotional ATM. I believe the position has been terminated with cause." The room exploded again. Even the bailiff chuckled behind his hand. Sabrina glared daggers at me. "You think this is funny?" I met her stare. "Not funny. Educational." "Mrs. Hart," the judge interjected, "I suggest you stop speaking. Every sentence you add is an extra 5 minutes of embarrassment." At that, the gallery burst into quiet applause. Someone actually clapped, before the bailiff shot them a look. The judge banged her gavel. "Order." Although, I must admit, that was well timed. Once the laughter died down, she turned serious. "In light of the overwhelming evidence of forgery and fraud, this court not only dismisses Mrs. Hart's claims, but also refers her for investigation regarding falsified documentation." Sabrina's lawyer looked like he might faint. "Why, Your Honor?" She cut him off. "Mr. Lewis, I suggest you get your client new stationery, and maybe a calendar from the correct year." I swear I saw Alvarez trying not to clap. The final gavel hit sounded like a victory drum. "Case dismissed. Mrs. Hart, you are free to leave, but not too far. I have a feeling we'll be seeing you again soon." Sabrina sat frozen, mouth slightly open, as if her brain had blue-screened. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering frantically, but she wasn't listening. She just stared at me. "You'll regret this," she hissed as the courtroom emptied. "Already did," I said, grabbing my folder. "That's why we're here." Outside the courtroom, the energy was electric. Reporters were everywhere, microphones shoved into faces. One asked, "Mr. Hart, any comment on today's outcome?" I smiled. "Yeah, honesty wins. Every single time." The clip hit social media before I even made it to my car. That afternoon, Daniela called. "She's trending." I laughed. "For the right reasons, I hope." "Oh, definitely. Hashtags include hashtag forgery queen and hashtag pen from the future." I nearly spit out my drink. "No way." "Way," Daniela said, chuckling. "Apparently, someone's already selling shirts." I shook my head. "That's America. We turn everything into merch." By evening, Sabrina's luxury wellness brand had gone private. Her influencer friends suddenly stopped tagging her. She posted one last cryptic message. People will twist your story when they can't handle your truth. The comments were brutal. One person wrote, "Yeah, but your truth is in Comic Sans." I shouldn't have laughed as hard as I did. But I did. Later that night, I sat out on the balcony with a glass of whiskey, looking out over the city. The chaos, the noise, the circus, all finally over. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel tense. It felt earned. My phone buzzed. "Alvarez, you see the clip?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, grinning. Guess the judge's laugh went viral. "Man," he said, chuckling. "I've seen some dumb cases in my career, but yours? That was poetic. She forged your signature with a pen that didn't exist yet. That's history." "Yeah," I said, leaning back in my chair. "You think they'll teach it in law school?" "They should," he replied. Lesson 1. Never mess with a calm man and his lawyer. I raised my glass. "I'll drink to that." When I finally went to bed, I slept like a man who'd just evicted chaos. No stress, no alarms, no texts asking for money for energy realignment retreats. Just peace, and maybe a little smug satisfaction. Because at the end of the day, Sabrina didn't just lose a case. She lost her audience, her act, and her illusion of control. And in that courtroom, when justice laughed, it wasn't just at her. It was laughing with me. When the bailiff cuffed her for fraud and forgery, Sabrina finally stopped talking. That alone felt like divine intervention. She turned to me as they led her away, eyes full of that same entitled disbelief she'd worn since the day she first maxed out my credit card. "You'll regret this," she spat. I smiled. "Already did, sweetheart. That's why we're here." The gavel had barely cooled before my phone started buzzing. Friends, reporters, even Caleb, my business partner, texting things like, "Bro, she really tried time travel forgery, and damn, Netflix needs to call you." Outside, the sun felt different. Lighter, warmer, like the universe had finally unclogged its moral drain. Daniela high-fived me on the courthouse steps. Alvarez handed me a coffee and said, "Next time, marry someone with fewer monologues." I laughed for the first time in months. Real laughter. The kind that doesn't hide behind exhaustion or sarcasm. 6 months later, I was in my new office, sipping espresso while my company numbers climbed higher than ever. Peace looked good on me. No drama, no fake apologies, no self-care retreats billed to my Amex. Just quiet wins and a bank account that finally belonged to me again. Sabrina got 3 years. Apparently, the judge didn't appreciate artistic forgery as a defense. Her social media disappeared faster than her conscience, and her fan club went with it. Sometimes, late at night, I think about her, not with anger, just amusement. The woman who once wanted to live off my fortune now lives off taxpayers. And that infamous signature she forged, the one that started her downfall, it didn't just backfire. It blew up her entire show.